Miller time.
All right, good evening.
That's right.
It is Thursday, June the 3rd. This is the pre-agenda meeting for the Town of Spencer Board of Aldermen June meeting. And it is 5:31 p.m. With that, I'll call the meeting to order. And with that, do I have a volunteer from the board to give our invocation this evening?
I'll give it.
All right.
Dear Heavenly Father, bless this group as we work together in the progress of our town. Be with all our citizens, keep them safe, let them know they are loved and protected, and guide us with wisdom as we make decisions. Amen.
Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have several things on our agenda tonight. The first being a workshop to review and discuss our fiscal year 21-22 budget. The second will be a presentation from planning staff on NCDOT 2021-22 US Highway 29 resurfacing. And then we will review our agenda for our June 8th regular meeting. Okay. So with that, we will start in with our budget workshop. And with that, Mr. Franzese, do you have any introductory comments?
Mayor and members of the board, I once again thank you for your time and deliberation through the budget process. As you recall, last week we presented the staff recommendation for the coming year's budget. Tonight's goal is to workshop and answer any questions you might have and see how we can facilitate your process of considering the budget, looking towards next week's public hearing and hopefully adoption of a budget. Of course, the budget can be adopted at any point after conducting the public hearing, but prior to the end of June.
Okay. All right, very good. And with that, I will open it up now. And I guess what I would like to do is give each board member an opportunity to bring up any specific questions or comments based on the review of the budget that they've had a chance to look at over the last week. And with that, Ms. Sledge, we'll start with you, if that's okay. Or I can start with Mr. Miller.
No, that's okay.
We'll start on the end and work our way in.
That's okay. I do have some questions, and I've made a list of things I wanted to ask about.
Okay.
So, and I don't have these in any particular order. So, when we were talking about the fire department last year, we ended up saying that we would spend the money to buy half of the extraction equipment that they needed in their 2021 budget, with the remainder of it to be included in the 21-22 budget. And I didn't see that. So my question is, did we end up getting the half of it that we planned to buy, and do we need to put money in the budget for that for this budget year?
Okay. Great question. Mr. Franzese, do we want to address that at this point?
And I don't know if we have the budget detail to look at, and also Keith is going to be joining via Zoom. He sent a message about 3 minutes ago, said he was still working on trying to do that, so he should be joining in
Okay.
momentarily.
Well, do we want to circle back to that then once he can
That'd be
join?
fine.
Is that okay, Ms. Sledge?
Yes.
Okay.
certainly. We talked a little bit about the events budget for last year and versus this year's budget, and I had questions about whether the amount that's in there is enough, since it also includes the amount of money that goes to the Transportation Museum.
Agree, and I think that was a good
That was
point
something
in
we
that
talked
we
about.
have a large holiday celebration that we are planning. $2,500 of that budget is planned to go towards the Transportation Museum. I believe, Peter, the proposed budget was 10,000
Yeah.
for events the next fiscal year.
The total, I believe, was 12.
12.5.
Okay, 12.5, okay.
I think that's right.
Okay.
Well,
I think it may have been 12.
Pull it. It's been funny.
And we do have detail about how that number was put together, but yeah, tourism and events recommendation would be $12,000. 2,500 of that was the amount dedicated towards the Transportation Museum. Faith is pulling up the detail now. There's $800 noted for National Night Out. Hometown Holidays is noted at 1,500. Farmers Market is noted at 1,200, and Fridays on Fifth Series / cruise-ins noted at 6,000. So those were, of course, those are kind of planning numbers that arrived at the whole. Those aren't, I would say, that was at the time our best estimation of how that could be allocated, but that's where that number came from.
All right, discussion from the board on that?
I would like to see the events budget increased just a little bit more. Probably about another 2,000,
I was gonna suggest a total $15,000
Yeah,
budget.
that's what I was thinking.
because again, we can't predict the future, but I'm hoping that with the success of the drive-in that we had, and hopefully the success that we'll have with the Saturday night out and the other things that are coming, will only lead to more positive things for the events for all of our citizens. So I would like to have that increased.
And I see that as a direct benefit to our
Yeah.
citizens and taxpayers.
Yep.
Sorry, me and Bob are coming in and we were not together. Just gonna tell you that for the record.
The rumor's already gone out.
He was late on his own accord as much as I am. There you go.
All right, we've just started, so we're starting into our budget
Just talking
workshop.
about budget stuff.
And we've just started with Alderwoman Sledge providing her feedback. And what we're gonna do is go through and provide feedback on each individual alderperson may have. And so we've started with her, and the thing that she was bringing up was our events budget and questioning if that budget was sufficient at 12,000, considering 2,500 of that
Right.
will be for the Transportation
And
Museum.
our employees have done a heck of a lot of work, not only on the past drive-in, but also, I know that Chief James has spent a lot of time on the next event, which is the Saturday night out. And we're hoping that as more events come into play, that we can ask for sponsorships to help alleviate some of the costs, so that all the burden is not on the town or the taxpayers. Getting sponsorships for events, that's to be done, or to be at least to consider. So, we don't have, the town doesn't have to carry the full weight of the financial responsibility.
I know you did get some sponsorships at Holiday for the
Yep.
Christmas event, so, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So we had talked, and I think as they were walking in, what we had suggested instead of 12,000 for that budget was a $15,000 budget for the year, which was an additional 3. Peter gave a breakdown. I think can you run through that breakdown real quickly of what the current budget?
Yep, so 2,500 is the amount requested for the Transportation Museum marketing support. $800 would be put together the National Night Out event. Hometown Holidays is listed at 1,500, and what that means is that was the idea behind what would come about for the Christmas time events. Farmers Market, $1,200, and Fridays on Fifth Series, 6,000.
And correct me if I'm wrong, citizens can donate to the Hometown Holidays.
Yes, it is a 501c3 nonprofit. Yep. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Next, under governing body, we have listed and allocated a budget line of 10,924 for dues and subscriptions. What does that include?
Sure. The detail on that, Central Line Regional Council is included in there. You want to hear the specific amounts as well?
Not necessarily, just wanted to know what it covered.
North Carolina League Municipalities, annual dues, UNC School of Government, the city of Concord and, which is really the Cabarrus Rowan MPO,
Mhm.
Rowan EDC. Now, actually, one that came up today that we had not previously gotten the amount for, that's not on this list, but it's something I believe we'd want to perhaps include, is the Rowan Chamber. It was a smaller amount, $600 or so, but that's what would cover that amount.
Okay, and so that does include the allocation to the Economic Development Corporation
Yes.
or council? Yeah, okay. All right. A question, what is revenue state share in the revenues? What is that?
We just come in last month. The state sends it to us, I think it's more for,
It's the fire
department,
protection.
fire protection, the fire department. So they send it to us on an annual basis.
That's because of the fire protection of the state property at the North Carolina Transportation Museum. They provide funding to cover some of the costs.
Okay, I noticed that we had gotten a good portion of it, but there was still money left to be collected, and I just wondered what it was. Okay, and the utility franchise tax, what is that?
That comes from the state, and, they give that to us, I believe it's a quarterly basis,
Uh-huh.
and it consists of, different things. It has the, utilities, the electricity sales tax, the telecommunications in there, I believe.
Okay.
It's like cell phone
Well, that-
tax,
okay.
those sorts of
Okay,
things.
All
Yeah.
right.
It's just a variety of
Okay.
different ones.
Okay, under, I think it's under administrative. You have allocated $1,100 for printing. I don't think that's high enough. I don't know. That just didn't sound like a good enough number for any printing costs that we might have done. The newsletters, anything, any kind of, flyers, anything like that we might do.
Sure. So to clarify that a little bit, we are proposing next year to cover the cost of our newsletters through the contract services account because we contract out for that as part of the service. And so this would really be more for other things, business cards, brochures, things of that nature. It would not include the newsletters. It also doesn't include some of the costs associated with our copier machine that are covered elsewhere. We have those covered, I believe, in correct if I'm wrong, we have that specifically elsewhere as well. But looking at the printing line, which is 341. Yeah, so that is again business cards, stationery, brochures, and flyers, and then manual documents and other forms. So
Okay.
those are the types of things we're trying to cover.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Okay, well, with the new logo and everything, I just felt like there was gonna be probably some additional printing that might be done. I mean, I don't know, does anybody use letterhead anymore? Or is it all generated on the desktop? But, and just, that number just didn't seem high enough to me. But if you're using contract services for the other things, particularly the newsletter, I can understand that. Okay, on the David Treem Education Fund, that is listed in here as an allocation of, budgeted for $3,000. How much has been spent from that for this year?
None,
Training.
none so far.
Okay, is that something we're gonna fund every year, or we fund it as we need it, or, if we've got 3,000 sitting in the account, are we gonna put another 3,000 in each year, or what's the plan on that?
So it's not a separate project fund or something that retains the revenues. Whatever's not spent this year goes away and it has to be reappropriated each year, just like anything else. So we're recommending this year's initial funding was $2,700, which was kind of a symbolic amount. And recommended a flat $3,000 for the program for next year. We also, part of it is making sure folks are aware and taking advantage of that, but so far, there hasn't been anybody who's made use of it so far this year.
I just assumed it would be like an account that rolled over, like a scholarship fund or something like that, that would continue to stay in place, but, okay.
It's in the general fund operating
Okay.
budget, so
Okay, for police, telephone and internet is budgeted for, 23,500, and it looks like it was $6,000 in fiscal year 21. And then other communication was $8,000 in, fiscal year 2021, and they were over budget by 1,800 there. So it looks like, is the budget being cut in half for 22?
no, but there were some things charged to other communication, in the current year that we're recommending and we believe due to, one thing I did not mention, last week that I should have is we are recommending a whole new chart of accounts, and those are explained, in between pages 17 and 21 of your booklet.
I have seen
And
some of those, so, yeah.
So there are things that, we're allocating to different accounts because they line up with what
Makes
we're
more
recommending.
sense. Okay,
And
right.
so part of that change that you see is that other communication, by the way we're defining it, is really tied to the radio system, the two-way radio system that the city of Salisbury maintains in Rowan County. And so, that's what that's for, and other would go into, the line you noted.
Okay. Where is the Yadkin River Trail money?
Now sitting in land management, you will see we added in a budget project ordinance this time. And so it's going to, if upon everyone's approval, it will have, its own project. But right now it's in land management. Which isn't on here because we're converting land management and administration together.
Yeah, I saw that you were combining those, and I had some questions about whether those funds, were actually combined. It looked to me like they weren't necessarily the same kind of money involved in it.
Before the end of this fiscal year, Yadkin River will have its own project line, and it's around $114,000 in there.
Yeah, I knew that money was there.
So to clarify, rather than running a project like that through our operating budget, some projects, and especially that one, is gonna take multiple years to accomplish. So just like with Park Plaza, we set up a separate fund to track it outside of our general fund. And a project fund is handled kind of like a separate fund, so that every year it doesn't have to be reappropriated over and over again. The funding that's there stays there.
Okay, all right, okay, last year we had added in $2,000 for programs for the library, that I do not think is in there for this year. But there is a line item for $26,900 for library maintenance. What does that cover?
That's the painting,
The
the
painting,
repainting of the building, of the soffit and everything.
26,900 is for painting it.
Yeah.
On top of some general, so I think 25,000 of that would be for the painting, and then some general maintenance funding as well. The funding that would typically be identified in this year's budget as programming is identified as contract services in next year's budget, as well as some advertising funding and supplies.
All right, and then I guess another question that
Well,
I
maybe
had.
before you move on with that question, but you asked the question reference to the monies that
Mhm.
that was needed for her this time, and it's not in it this time.
Right, well, I
So-
mean, we, I thought we had, so it's listed now under contract services as $1,700, is that right?
It's split in a few areas, so rather than just been using an account called programs, which is a little vague. We're being more specific about what that is. And so when we're paying performers and others, that's contract services. When we're advertising, it's advertising. And when we're buying supplies, to host the programs, it's supplies. So that's the intention, is that we're being clearer about what it means. rather
In
than-
my understanding, you're doing that to try and create uniformity across all of our
Yes.
departments and how we're showing the accounting.
That's correct.
Okay, and was the money that we talked about for the, new printer and supplies, is that the 1650 for supplies data processing?
Yes.
Is that it? Okay,
Yes.
okay. All right. And, then talking about the holiday bonuses. 1.25% doesn't sound like a lot of money, but when you put that to numbers, it comes out to be a lot of money. Have you worked through those numbers? Do you know what you're talking about there?
Yes, so in the current year, just to give you a sense of comparison, in the current year, the funding for this was split into two different pots, which I don't believe makes sense anymore. I think there was a time where the town offered a true longevity program where you got some incremental percentage based on years of service,
Right.
maybe. I don't know what the fraction was, but some amount times your years of service, and then that was a longevity payment. And then there was a Christmas bonus of sorts, lump sum as well. And at some point that evolved. Our current year budget included for all full-timers 1% longevity payment, plus a $250 Christmas bonus on top of that. Meanwhile, our part-timers, I believe, had a 125 flat bonus with no percentage-based longevity payment. So this recommendation is that we evolve, and matches with our personnel policy, a holiday bonus program that is appropriated through this budget process, and what the recommendation for next year's budget would be a 1.25% for full-timers and the $300 flat bonus for part-timers. And so that rather than full-timers getting both and part-timers getting a very small flat, it kind of guarantees that everybody gets at least $300 and then up to the full-timers on the 1%. So say somebody whose annual salary is $35,000, theirs is $350. Somebody whose annual salary is $50,000, theirs is $500. Somebody whose salary is $75,000, $750. So that's the range in terms of real numbers of what we're talking about with this, rather than kind of more of a disparity between.
So it'll be slightly less for full-time salary folks, and then part-time, they'll get a little bit larger bonus at Christmas.
Well,
No, not the way what you just said, because somebody like you is going to benefit more than everybody else because you would make way more money, versus the person who is less money is going to still make less.
But I think what he's saying, we're already paying the longevity, but the
No,
longevity.
if that be the case, it is still not with the longevity. If you look at what he's making versus how long he's been here, he'll still benefit way more. You still will. I don't know why you can't stick with what we've already had and just keep it there. And in fairness of the part-time and with the full-time, it won't be that somebody like yourself, and I keep saying you because you are the most paid out of everybody that we have here, but that it is one of those things where everybody is going to be fair, where it's just fair across the board, the way we did it on the holiday stipend. 300 here, and I think it was 150 for the other, or whatever, or however we had it. Because if we go off of everybody's pay, Peter, it's going to be that. It's going to be the people who make the most money is still going to get more money.
so
Do
again,
we pay FICA on that as well?
yes.
Okay, so, yeah, we're looking at $30,000 roughly for the Christmas holiday bonuses. If you take your budget figures for what you have as for personnel figures and multiply that, add it together, and then multiply by 1.25%, you come up with $29,147. And then FICA added to that is 15%, I think.
7.65, and it's included in the FICA numbers.
Okay,
So anything that we're paying FICA on is included in the FICA number, so that would be the bonus and just regular salary.
Okay.
And the same thing, retirement comes out of that as well,
right.
and so that's included in the retirement figures.
So there again,
Figure line.
once again, we're back at where the community is getting ready to pay a big lump for this idea that just came up, when we need to just keep it where it's at, because at the end of the day, we're not trying to short the staff or anything like that. Gosh knows, we always want to look out for all you guys, but at the same time too, in fairness, it's still not fair the way that's set up. You know, if the little guy's gonna get as much as you get, then I'm for it. But if you still get more than he gets, and even with the longevity, if you look at it truthfully, we can use Joel for a good example. He's got longevity, and I can guarantee you his won't be as much as yours. So it's those things that I'm talking about. Where does it differ?
And if I could restate the figures, because I was getting my numbers. We currently, in the current year, full-timers got a 1% amount plus 250 flat amount on top of that. So 1%, say $50,000 salary. 1% would be $500 plus 250 on top of that would be $750 total. What we're recommending is for full-timers not to have both pieces, but to make the percentage 1.25%. So on $50,000, that would be roughly, I think, 625. 1.25% of 50,000 as a comparison. Then for the part-timers, rather than just giving them the current model was I believe a 125 flat bonus, and that's it. There would be at
So are you using it like I understand the longevity, but I always thought the merit raises were that too. Are we still doing that? Are you guys still doing that as well, or no?
No, and so this takes longevity out of the equation to align it with the personnel policy. It's called a holiday bonus. The funding amounts of that is at your discretion, but this is the recommendation. Merit increases, cost of living increases, all those things are not part of our pay plan anymore. We have now developmental pay.
Okay, so the 30,000 holiday, because that's what it's going to come out about. When you do the math, it's going to be about 30,000 for a holiday.
I might have misfigured something there, but
Yeah,
I
I can tell you, it's not going to be as much as 30, but it's going to be way over 20 to do that of what he's requesting.
And I guess that's the question that we ultimately probably need to get to. There's the equity question of it, but the other is, what is the budgetary impact of the new proposal versus what we had been paying overall? So, you know, if we're talking 30,000 or whatever it is, how does that compare to what that bonus program this current fiscal year is
So
running?
if you look at what we were doing before that, and when they were doing the 300 and the 150, and you take the employees and they've been doing it for years. I'm not trying not to change, but like I said, I want it to always be fair. This, what you're proposing to me, is not fair. It's going to always be the guy who makes the most money still going to get more money. That's the way I see it.
Certainly, an option is to choose a flat amount for everyone and apply it. It's whether or not you want a distinction between full-timers and part-timers in those flat amounts. But and if you would like us to make some further calculations and comparisons, we can certainly do that, comparing the current year to this proposal or other options.
well, the personnel policy does spell out, you know, part-timers, how many hours they will have had to work in order to qualify, and volunteers and all that. I mean, that's spelled out here.
Yes.
I do not recall the 1% of the salary. I don't remember that. I remember asking about the line items that were listed as longevity and what that meant. And I was told that it was a holiday, end of year holiday bonus. But I don't remember a 1% across the board. I just don't remember that. Maybe I slept through that piece.
That is that is what happened in the current year, for last year's budget document. So would it be helpful for an overall cost comparison of current year model versus this proposal, and perhaps something else like a flat?
Well, that's where I've been working. This is the annual budget for last year, and I had the proposed budget for last year as well, and I was looking back and forth between these and the other numbers. So
Sure.
that's what's consumed me for the last couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's all the questions I have.
So, and in looking at that, then, do you have the comparison between what we,
I don't think it's broken out here.
yeah, I don't think it is
I don't
either.
think it's broken out here as like the total amount.
Right.
I think it's by by department, by category, that
Right.
sort of thing.
Okay.
There is, there is something for salaries and wages, longevity.
And we do have a line 127 in each budget unit listed, that it said salaries and wages bonus. So that is what, if you're, for example, wanting to compare any one solid and yard operations, for example, last year's to next year's, you can see that it's listed in these budgets as line 127. In the current year, it's also line 127.
What's the preference of the board?
For me, I'm still stuck on be fair with everybody and keep it at one flat rate for full-time and part-time kind of thing. None of this basing it off of who's been here the longest and who makes more money. If that be the case, we're back at that hypocrisy thing that I was talking about before. I mean, that's what we're gonna always be. The little guy's gonna never be able to be even just a part of just a mere bonus if we go that route.
What's the lowest grade employee we have?
The grade 3 is as needed library assistant. If you're looking at more permanent based positions, the grade 6 would be we have some part-time positions at grade 6. And then you have, I don't know that we have anybody in a grade 7. I think grade 8 is the next grade that would be used. And that's where we have some,
Public Works crew members.
Yeah.
At grade 8.
And they will be the ones that always get the least, who do the most and the dirtiest work. So my fight right now is for them.
Yeah, their minimum, that would be right around $300, I think. If they're at the minimum, if they're at their annual minimum of $28,017.60.
Here's a suggestion, and I mean, this might be the more equitable way to do it. I don't, Peter and Faith, you need to look at the cost implication of it. But looking at a $500 bonus for full-time, $250 for part-time. Across the board flat. What that does is it's going to normalize. It means that somebody that's getting paid as a director from a Christmas standpoint is going to get paid the same bonus as a public works, field person. But then it's also going to provide a bump for our part-time folks and recognize them.
and we're happy to do that. And just to be clear with the board, my goal with this recommendation was to take what our current model was and to achieve more equity by raising what the flat amount for part-timers were, and to take that extra icing on top for full-timers down by just putting it at the percentage. But I totally respect your feedback on this, and we can try to use numbers.
Yeah, and I guess from my perspective, I think the fair way to do it is to look at what we spent this current fiscal year. And then let's come up with a recommendation that's going to set an equal bonus for full-time and an equal bonus for part-time that comes out equivalent to what the current budget that we have budgeted for bonuses. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah. I still want to take care of our people. I mean, I mean, when you say a 1.25%, that doesn't sound like very much, but when you start adding it all up, it adds up to a lot of money over a period of time.
Well, no, this way it's like what Jonathan
Yeah.
just got through saying, and you just shed light on it. It just makes it fair.
Yeah,
And people know
Approximately.
exactly what to expect.
exactly. That's, yeah,
That-
that's,
that-
okay, and I didn't have anything else.
Okay, do we want to circle back? Is Chief Lanning on? So we can circle back to the fire department question?
There we go.
All right, good evening, Chief Lanning.
Mayor, board, how are y'all this afternoon?
Good, hope you're doing well.
Well, the beach is gorgeous. I cannot complain too much.
Wish we were there. Alderwoman Sledge had a question.
We're moving the house, y'all can just come on down after the meeting.
All right, we'll be there. We'll be there about 2:00 in the morning. Chief Lanning, Alderwoman Sledge had a question for you on the budget related to extraction equipment.
We,
I don't believe there should not, okay, it may be the question, I will tell, I don't think I put a request in for that.
That's the question.
yeah,
Okay,
and,
okay.
we,
Why did I not?
yeah, yes, why? Because you told us last year you wanted it, and you were gonna buy half of it and then get the other half next year. So, do you need
Yes,
it?
ma'am. So that request was made under the previous administration, and we did purchase part of that. But when we're looking at the total amount of our budget, where monies, need to be spent and where it would be a better benefit for the town and the citizens, I am completely surrounded by departments with full complement of extrication tools. And at least one of those are coming on every accident that we have in town. And so, out of a right mind, I did not believe that was something that the town truly needed to invest another $20,000 to $30,000 in. When we could allocate that money to more, something that was a greater need, if that makes sense.
Makes good sense to me. Just thought I'd ask, just in case you needed it and we'd overlooked it.
No, ma'am.
All right, very good. Thank you, Chief Lanning. All right. Alderwoman Sledge, that's it for you?
That's all I
Okay,
have.
very good. Mr. Miller?
Oh, skip it to me, huh? I just
Yeah,
have
we're
a-
gonna work our way in.
Okay, well, that's fine, that's fine. I have a question that relates to, it's just a better understanding of the police department. I think, Chief James is asking for an additional patrol staff to be cross-trained to assist investigations. I know we have one officer that does investigations full-time, is that correct? Do we have that much of a need for investigation to have a part-time person as far as that goes?
And to be clear, before Chief James starts in there, the idea is that there's potential for that, and that's not the core purpose of the position. The core purpose is to, up our staffing so that we can have two on patrol at all times.
That's
So
what I thought
that's
was
just
the main
going
thing.
towards the two people that you're requesting then, for what his question is. That's just
that-
going
that-
towards that,
that-
not trying to get a part-timer and two full-time.
Correct.
Is that what you're doing?
You can go ahead.
And I will tell you, and if Investigator Fowle was here, he would tell you that he needs help. A lot of his time recently has been expended with, sex type crimes that are very time consuming. He spends a lot of time at the Child Advocacy Center,
Okay.
interviewing kids. Some of these originate from DSS complaints. Occasionally kids will go to school and tell a faculty member that, I was touched improperly. And once those cases start, they're very time consuming. He also does all of the background investigations currently on police applicants, which a civilian is not near as detailed as what we have to do on a police applicant. So he's expending a lot of time there. He feels like he needs help, and there are some weeks he's in pretty good shape.
Right.
There's other weeks where he is swamped and stressed to the max. And he has said to me, to be very frank with all of you, and I hope I can do that. He says I can go to, Salisbury PD, make a lot more money and have a lot less caseload. So he's expressed that to me numerous times. I think.
Then
they're at-
apparently he's not paying attention to the news because Salisbury done picked up more on their calls than anything else. So if he feels like he need to do that, then he needs to go ahead and do that. It's just, Chief, I mean, wow. What about using any of your sergeants or any of your patrol officers to go ahead and assist?
Well, and
Schools
We-
get ready to let out too.
we are encouraging that. However, they're gonna have summer school this year. So normally we plan on the SROs to help us, but they've got summer school this year. So they've indicated that this year they're gonna have to stay in the school longer, which is good contractually. That doesn't create a problem. But whereas normally when the other officers go on vacation, then, you know, we're allowed for those SROs to sort of fill in patrol spots.
So does your officers not follow up on their cases like they should? I mean, they're the ones that went and caught the fish. They need to clean it.
Well, they do, Chief, but I will tell you, our call volume, and we've asked Alan recently for another, call volume update and how we compare to other agencies. But it seems like there are days that even on our day shift, our people are running ragged going from call to call. And it's hard for them to find time to follow up on some of their cases. They do on the less serious, but the investigator file does most all of the felonies. And as you know, there's a lot of expertise involved in what he has to do that a guy that just graduated or a lady from BLET, they're not gonna have that expertise yet. So part of our goals are in this extra position is you approve it, if you approve it, is to have a person that we can start mentoring to assist with some of the property crimes. Less serious, maybe not felony, type cases. But, you know, we strive to follow up on all the cases, but if investigator file was here, and he's probably still in the building, he was just a little bit ago, you know, you could certainly hear from him directly on what he's up against. And I can promise you that I see the frustration and hear it in his voice and see it in his body.
Well,
language.
I'll
So,
speak for him too. If he's doing hiring, if he's helping doing the background checks for the newcomers coming in, and he's also doing investigations, I bet he is stressed out.
So I do have
Is
a
there-
question on that. Why are we doing our own internal background checks? Should we not be contracting that out simply for from a liability standpoint?
Well, we personally like doing ours because we know that we've uncovered every stone that we could, and we know when we give someone the oath of office that we're getting absolutely the best we can get for this town. We have no reservation whatsoever. Now, there are places, former chief in China Grove does some backgrounds. He contracts out and does a lot of Salisbury PDs. It's an extra expenditure that we, you know, would have to pay for, but that's a possibility. One other thing that we plan to do is for Officer Reed, who is the SRO at the middle school, is to train him as a background investigator. You know, we hope with higher pay that we're gonna quit having turnover. People are gonna stay here, and we're not gonna have to be doing backgrounds like we've been doing for the last 7 or 8 years. I mean, we haven't been full for 5 years. We've had 1 or 2 vacancies nonstop.
So the cross training that is needed, that you're going to be doing with him, it would help too, Chief. Just saying that if your other supervisors could be involved, so just in case somebody do decide to do a career change and go to another agency, you've got a backup plan. You got something on the back burner. But it still goes back to, and I'll be one to tell you, no, I agree with you. File will need some help, mainly from what he's burdened with. I already know too. I agree with you. He does need help. And the other position does need to possibly go to another investigator. So I'm for you on that part.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree. It's just I'm just saying some of that with the your patrol supervisors, the sergeants, versus not your patrol officers. They really, I'm just saying, suggesting they need to help him reference to some of these follow-ups that can be conducted without a thorough look into. They're seasoned enough. That's why they made sergeant. Saying how you don't want a rookie to do it, then have a supervisor do it, but somebody to at least help him, because you got enough of those now.
And I'm a big proponent for cross training, right? I mean, that's succession planning, right? When you have folks that are trained to do other things and step up when it's needed. So,
Absolutely.
okay.
And I agree with you 110%. The issue we've had is we've had these vacancies. We've had Officer Smith, say, working by himself. So, and we're trying to catch up on training that we have missed. Officer Signs have gone to a lot of training recently. But because we've had vacancies, we haven't had warm bodies to cover 24-hour shifts. So hopefully all this is going to improve with improvement in the pay plan, that we'll be able to retain folks. We want to recruit good people and we want to retain them. We don't want them to leave. We don't want them to go to Salisbury. I certainly don't want File to go to Salisbury anywhere else.
Yeah, it just defeats the purpose of this board, and I know for a fact this board works so hard at making sure those guys get thrown everything. We're throwing the kitchen sink at them. We're giving them raises, they done got vehicles, you know, giving everything, but you still, it's like we still can't give enough, because you still have somebody say, well, I'm gonna go to Salisbury if I don't get this. It's like, come on now, show a little humility, because I can promise you the last board before this one didn't look at and do what this board has done.
Right.
And for him to sit up there and be able to say that, and for you to say that he said that, it just makes it where it goes, well, then tell him to go ahead and go to Salisbury.
Well, and maybe you perceived that a way I didn't mean it. Maybe I didn't say it very well. My point was that his view is I can go somewhere, make more money, and have less of a caseload. I don't take it as a threat. I take it as him trying to say to me that other agencies have a lower caseload, and my stress level here is sometimes a little bit higher. At least that's the way I perceived it for him. I might not have done a great job in relaying that to you.
And it's fine. It's just one of the things where you as a supervisor, I suppose, need to make sure he knows that he is in a small town and he did know what he was getting into before he got here. It's just like his commute. He knew where he lived, how far it was. It'll be the same thing as far as him being detective. He knows he's been the only one all this time. But yes, you do need another investigator.
And I think the key is we're not hiring another investigator, Steve, to your point.
Well, I just
And-
wanted a better
and-
understanding of
yeah.
what was going on.
Yes, the cross training, but I will say, the other thing in this budget is adding one additional position and freezing that lieutenant position, because ultimately, and I've been a big proponent of this, we need more officers on patrol.
Control, correct.
And
That's right.
we do not need one officer on patrol out there by him or herself. And I
Well,
think that's why we're proposing the four-man teams.
okay.
And I think from a liability standpoint, it's protecting our officers. It's also protecting our citizens more as well.
Yeah, I think my interpretation of a person that does investigations, and I'm looking at a layman part, it's basically a person working inside as far as that goes. And like he's saying, and I agree, we need more people outside the office patrolling the areas, foot patrols and different things like that, looking after our town. And that was my concern. Were we actually adding another person inside with Officer File? And like I said, my interpretation is I'd rather see more people outside the building.
And I'm a proponent of that, and I agree with you that we've got to protect the guys out there that are working by themselves.
Absolutely.
If we were not situated geographically,
Yeah.
where East Spencer
Sure.
can back us up,
Yeah.
we back them up.
Yeah.
As an old major on the highway patrol used to tell me, we'd be in deep pigeon poop. And we would, and East Spencer would. So as it is, they back us up, we back them up. And that started, when Chief Hovis was over there. That's the best relationship we've had, mutual aid wise, and we didn't have to ask. We knew they were coming. They know if they get a domestic violence call, we're headed that way, so.
And I had an opportunity to do a ride along here several weeks back, and I can't tell you how beneficial I got to see how beneficial that relationship is. because the reality is the stuff that's happening over there may be coming from here or vice versa. And, you know, when each municipality has one person out there on patrol, the fact that we can back each other up, I think is really, really good.
And
So,
let me say for the record, how many mayors go ride-alongs? I mean, this is just phenomenal.
I made it safely back.
I don't know, I watch Blue Bud, so, yeah.
It's as close as it gets to the ride-along for you, right?
Serious, I would encourage all of y'all to do it if you get an opportunity. It's an enlightening experience.
Can I take my police dog?
Yeah.
Your canine.
She got a canine.
I don't think so. Thank you, Chief James.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Great
That's all I
question.
got.
That's all you have?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
And I applaud the mayor for that. I didn't know he was coming, but
It was,
I heard it Monday morning. But guess what? The mayor's been out the road with.
I got an experience, that's for sure.
It's,
Was it
it's
Saturday
out.
night?
It really is.
It was a Saturday night.
Saturday night? Boy, I'm telling you, that's
Yeah, you
when you
asked
need to
for
be
it on
out there.
Saturday night.
You wanna see,
All right.
see the action.
Let's skip over to Mr. Bish.
Well, actually, one of the negatives of trying to do all this work back to back to back to back, you make notes and you forget where you made your notes. But since the chief was right up here, one of the notes I did find was this thing about canine officer. We're not
Yeah,
we're
so
not engaging in that, are we?
let me clarify, okay? Because that was something that I had brought up and requested that we get an idea of the number. It's not in this budget, and based on some additional research I have done, based on cost and upkeep and everything like that, and some other agencies that can provide support to us, I am not recommending that at this time.
Oh,
Okay, so
Start looking
and
at
you
them
can
numbers.
share on it if you want, because I know you personally have had an experience where you've had
Oh
a canine.
my gosh! All I can tell you is Chief James is gonna be dodging a bullet on it. Oh, it was a double-edged sword. It was a great experience, but it was bad at the same time. It drained the budget majorly because if you own a dog, you already know for yourself with your personal dog how much your vet bill is. I took my little dog just recently to the vet, and her vet bill just to let her pee in a bottle cost $75 and $250 before I walked out the door, and I was like, what is this? It's just a dog. Well, no, it's my little person, but still at the same time, where I'm going with this is the vet bills are astronomical. The other agencies are going to want to bother you over that dog every single time. They'll be using the dog more than your agency. And then there's just the cost and the upkeep, and you have to train them. They have to go through a 6 months training too, just like the officers. And you have to pay them like an officer. And then the insurance and just the upkeep, because you still have to pay for the officer feeding the dog. The town's gonna have to buy a extra nice kennel for the dog at the officer's house. But what's even worse, yeah, and a special. Well, they don't have to do a special vehicle. They can go ahead and enhance the vehicle with hot pops so the dog can jump out right away, and the fans and the cooling fans, and even a little pee area inside the vehicle. But what gets you the urination area. Stop it, Sam.
Well,
Anyways,
Run by the house, I'll show you what they look like.
dog turds. But no, what I'm saying is basically though, what'll get you all out of this is all that money that you put into the dog and all that money you put into the officer. That officer's going to want to do a career change all of a sudden because now he's in this small town and he want to be somewhere where they have SWAT or where they have bigger agency detective or bigger money or something, whatever he saw on TV. And all that's going out the water. So it's that heartbreaking issue too.
So-
enough about that.
Based on that, we're just gonna bug other agencies more about getting them when we need them.
Okay, all right, that's good.
Sounds good to me.
And when they need it, yeah.
Yep.
And still staying in police, did we lose a vehicle? What we're replacing one patrol vehicle? Did we lose one? Or
So let's talk about because I know we do have a vehicle replacement process with all of our departments that we're looking at, but y'all want to speak to the request for the new police vehicle?
Yes, so that would be to put us on more of a manageable schedule for vehicle replacement, rather than having to do in the last few years, I believe the town's replaced, in police specifically,
A lot.
2, 3, 4 vehicles per year. And Chief, if you wanna come back up, please do, but the idea is we continue, it's a lot more manageable to do one a year. We still have some older vehicles that are, where we still have some older Crown Vics and other, and so if you replace a vehicle before the wheels fall off, you could sell it for more, it's less to maintain, and so on. So that's the idea, is to continue that progress with keeping up with our vehicles.
But we have, currently, we have enough right now to manage our patrol services, correct?
We do right now. I think we would be wise to get another vehicle, otherwise we're gonna get in the same shape that previous boards got us in. We didn't order cars. There's a crisis right now with getting cars, as Joel and I have recently talked about with the public works truck. Right now, we're lucky that Hilderton Dodge has ordered some stock vehicles. She's holding one of those for me in the event y'all say, yes, get a police vehicle. If I can't get that one, she says it's gonna be months before I can even order a new Durango. And then there'll be even more months before we see it get here. Then we've got the time for upfitting that vehicle. So once we get behind, it's hard to catch up, and that's what we experienced about the time that Mr. Cream got here. Our Crown Vics were worn out. The one that we're trying to sell, that y'all just approved us to sell, is sitting in Public Works now. We got ready to, Public Works came to pick it up, it wouldn't start. It is at Public Works now, been there for several weeks, close to a month, and they can't figure out why it won't start. So we're trying to get that one fixed to sell, and we can't even get it to crank. So, you know, we got cars that are, they're pretty old.
So do you have what vehicle specifically are you planning to replace with this new
It would
vehicle?
be one of the old Crown Vics.
And what roughly mileage and age on that?
Right now, for instance, just some of the old vehicles, and this is a car that we got free from Landis. It's got 120-some thousand miles on it that Officer Reed has got. The one that First Sergeant Brigman just turned in, that is now back on the road, and Niblock's driving it now as we're getting his re-decaled. I think it's got close to 80,000 on it.
So Chief, how many cars do you have all together together in your fleet?
I've got a list back there in the back of the room I can get and count.
No, just a guess off the top of your head.
I'm saying 16 to 17 vehicles.
So you have about 16, 17 vehicles, and you have a staffing of how many?
If
So
we,
far.
if we get the extra position, there will be 14 of us.
Okay. So you've got enough to staff up or supply for working personnel. You're just trying to make sure that replacing the old ones, bumping them in for the new ones, right?
Yes, but I will tell you, and it just happened today. Today it was time to recertify all the radars. Well, I asked these guys, they're either gonna have to leave their cars here, or they're gonna have to drive it here and bring it and get the radar recertified.
Right.
So they had to have a way to get home. And the guys that work 6B to 6A, the shop's not open, so they gotta leave their car for me to take it to the garage the next day, but they gotta have a way to get home. So we've got to have a fleet for them to use when they're working, but we've gotta have a backup if one gets wrecked or it breaks down, or they gotta leave it for maintenance.
So right now, you said you got a staffing of 14 officers and 16 vehicles. So the other two vehicles weren't operable for them to be able, and don't get me wrong when I say this, I've never thought it was the town or any municipality, sheriff department, anybody's responsibility to make sure an officer gets home, because at the end of the day, we gave them company cars. They're using vehicles, they're using the town's gas, they don't even have to pay for the insurance, they don't have to do any of that overhead. The least they can do is make sure they get that vehicle up here and be here present for that radar. It's not for them to worry about whether they can get back home. I don't, I feel what you're trying to say and be there for the officers, but we are already overcompensating, letting them drive them things 30 miles the other way since they don't live here in Spencer.
Well, didn't we say that we were gonna have them leave those cars here anyway? Anything over, what was the rule that we had? If they live beyond 30 miles, that
Yes,
they can't take the car home?
that's correct.
So it stays here, right? So it's been staying here, right?
Well, there was one officer who.
Other than that one,
no
there was one
else-
exception
No one
to
else
the
is
rule.
beyond that limit, right?
But there was only one officer that lived beyond the 30 miles?
Yes.
So all of them get to have take-home cars, and with them being able to have these company cars, Chief, all I can tell you is they need to make time to make sure they're here because the town's already overcompensating them for them being able to have take-home cars. So-
Just to add in the conversation, I think the main idea isn't necessarily about a specific radar certification. It's the idea of being to operate and then having spares for the unknown. We can't put a patrol officer in a regular vehicle to do their job.
Well, and making sure, I mean, from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, that we don't put the town in a position where we've got to replace 3 to 5 cars in any
Yeah.
given fiscal
That is
year.
the burden, is if we, these years that the town has replaced 2, 3, 4 vehicles a year, that's a lot than
Yeah.
knowing that each year we can do.
Well, it makes sense to do a replacement
Yes.
of each year. It does. It is what it is. And I can tell you this right now. The town of Spencer is not that big. North, south, east, and west. They're going to put more miles driving home than they will driving around this town. I'm sorry, they will. Well, let's put it like this. More wear and tear going up and down the highway than they would in this town. So, yeah, it does need to be replaced at the end of the day. It does.
But
compensation
but
for
is
it,
it something that you can skip a year on? I mean, coming out of the pandemic and whatnot, where prices of new cars are up high, and we're talking about not only the cars but the cameras and all the upfitment that has to go with these cars. Is it possible that the replacement plan can just stagger a little bit for 1 year and then put that into cycle in the
Well,
following year?
Yeah, and I think that's possible, but keep in mind, if we've got 16 to 17 vehicles, and starting now or 2 years ago, I guess, when we started getting the new vehicles, we replaced, 5 to 6 in the last 2 years. But moving forward, if we're replacing 1 a year, that means it's gonna take us 16 to 17 years to cycle through our fleet.
So it does need to start cycling now. It does.
The reality is, we're probably gonna get into still cases where we're gonna have to replace more than 1 a year down the road.
Well, it depends, and it depends on the officers and how they maintain the vehicles, because the whole point of giving them take-home vehicles is they're supposed to maintain these vehicles like as if it's theirs and take care of it a little bit more better. But
So the one that has 120,000 miles on it, how old is? I don't. What I want to understand is how many miles a year are we putting on a vehicle in the police
Officer
department?
Reed doesn't put a lot.
Yeah.
He does not want to drive a car home, so he's pretty much, this car works pretty well for him because it sits here, he drives it to the middle school. Now, he delivers a lot of food in it, he'll either get it or the old, 01 Durango and take it.
But how much does a vehicle for the guys that do to have take-home cars? I guess off the top of your head. How yearly? How many miles you would say?
You know, it varies. Officer Stein, for instance, he actually lives in Charlotte, but he drives more miles on patrol than he does back and forth. He's a guy that is moving, stopping a lot of cars. He's very active. Well, the mayor found that out.
He moves around for sure.
So he is one that really drives a lot. Officer Comer, who lives in town, doesn't drive as many. His car is gonna last a lot longer because, he lives in town. So.
So
he
I
is-
guess the best question maybe is, what is the average lifespan of a police car that we have in town?
We have, wow, we just got rid of an 01 not too long ago. So, we
Probably
had it.
too old.
Yeah.
We
Think
had it
so?
20 years.
It's 20.
We have got, some '04 Crown Vics left. We've got some, '08 Crown Vics left. So we have got our money's worth out of the Crown Vics that we have. And I think I shared with you that the one we bought for $350, we sold for $1,700. So even worn out Crown Vics do pretty well. There's still a market for those. But we seem to be having a lot of maintenance issues, and Joel can tell you better than me. We had 3 or 4, was it 4 lined up, Joel, the other day in the garage? I think it was Friday, and Chad was trying to get ready to go home. You know, we had one with a nail in the tire. We had number 8 that wouldn't start. We had another one, the siren speaker was out, so he was joking, this is Crown Vic Alley. And I really felt sorry for the guy. 2:30, he's stressed out, he's trying to get his cars back on the road. But
So-
that's life.
Joel, question for you. I know Chad was putting together basically a fleet replacement schedule.
Correct.
What was the plan in that fleet replacement schedule for our police department fleet? How long were we assuming a vehicle was going to remain in service with that plan?
It takes into consideration multiple things. It's not just the light, you know what I mean?
Right.
How old it is.
Right.
So-
Well, and it's based on the grade, the
grade.
grade that, yeah,
Correct.
for
And
it. Yeah.
On average, and it depends on how far you wanna run the cars too. That kind of, you know, we've got some that we've sold that had, you know, upwards towards 200,000 miles on the cars. So, and it depends on how many problems you're having with that car too. You know, if you have more problems, you wanna get rid of it earlier. So it takes into consideration all of that. I don't have that sheet in front of me, so I don't wanna.
So,
But-
and so I know that's with the existing fleet, but the new fleet going forward, have we planned? Yeah, I know things are gonna come up with the vehicles, but have we planned just in general? What's our policy going forward on service life and that sort of thing? You know, if we're,
We have to develop those metrics.
okay.
Yep.
So that's what I'm getting at
Yep.
then is I think, you know, whatever we approve with this budget, that's one of the things we need to work towards now. We've got a plan for our existing fleet.
Right.
But for this new fleet, as we're rolling it in, we need to come up with some policies as to, you know, how frequently we are gonna replace them, how long we're gonna keep them in service and that sort of thing.
It gets down to a cost benefit,
Yep.
and a trade-off of, you start losing in the maintenance costs and the resale value at some threshold. So that's
Right.
where we have to identify what for us makes sense, that we know we've reached all these thresholds,
Right.
and this is where our priority for replacement comes from.
Agreed.
Just a comment on the Crown Vics, they're obsolete cars. So parts are getting harder and harder to find, you know what I
That's
mean?
right. Yep.
People are buying the Crown Vics, from us for $1,700-$1,800, but they're getting them for the parts. That's what they're wanting, because, you know, our parts houses, even Ford, they're not carrying these parts anymore, so it makes it a little difficult to work, so
Yeah.
just want to put that in.
Okay.
If you need a backup, I have a '97 Blazer.
Okay.
Got 220,000 miles on it, so just let me know.
Yank the parts right off of it, okay, there you go, we have it. Just wait a while, pull them off.
No, I'll never give away 64.
So
That junk, it's not
with
worth it
that-
anyway.
with that, is the general consensus of the board that we do want to keep the vehicle replacement for the police department in the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Now, the upfitting of these vehicles is included in that cost, is
Yes.
that correct? Okay.
Have we,
Rich asked a great question, and Joel and I learned yesterday that it looks like Dodge is going up at least on their truck 3.4%. So you're right, COVID is affecting the price, so I guess if we can lock in on this one here, maybe we can avoid that almost $1,000.
And Chief, I learned the reason why that's happening is because when the COVID happened and all these vehicles have these digital chips in there.
Right.
And what happened is overseas said, okay, we gonna hold off while they hold off.
Right.
And now everybody's on hold until we get these digital chips to go into these vehicles. That's why I had somebody call me about my vehicle wanting a used vehicle, because nobody want to buy a new vehicle now. They want used vehicles. car lots are calling me now. So, yeah. So, yeah, you're right. So if she's holding it, you need to do what you gotta do.
Did we get the one that Mr. Freem had ordered from them? Have we gotten that one yet? The last one that was ordered?
Yes, it is actually just been upfitted, and we're waiting for Harwood Signs to put decals on it.
Okay.
So very soon, we will realize the last of those on the road. Yes, ma'am, good question. I've said before, she doesn't miss anything.
She doesn't.
That's the girl.
That's what I get paid
That's the
for.
girl. That's the girl.
Huge salary.
That's right.
That's right.
I knew you're making too much money over
Well,
there.
and I don't think we're even part of the holiday plan.
No, we're not.
Oh, all right, Mr. Bish, what other comments or questions do you have?
Okay, there were, I know I had a question in regards to the fees. Not that, I'm being partial, being on the, also on the Historic Preservation Commission, but, you have for fees for COA, 000 and after the fact 250. I know a lot of people that work on that commission, they put in a lot of time to get the work done on there, and I think COA should for something for a person to apply for COA for us to sit there for 2 hours and discuss it, you know. So at least for the major work, I think you need to put a fee in there that's commensurate to the time that we spend on that commission.
So have we had fees before and we're proposing to remove those for COAs?
I don't know, Joe.
Yes, currently we have a $20 fee for the major work COAs, and I believe.
Oh, it says 0 here.
Well, this is the
Current.
This is the new one.
Yeah, our current fee schedule in this year's budget.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Currently
Right,
today,
right.
we have $20 for major work COAs, and I think $10 for the minor work COAs. The reason that we are proposing a reduction to 0 is to make it less of a obstacle to our historic homeowners. The purpose being that if you own a historic home and you're doing a major project, you wouldn't want to add an additional barrier to encourage them to go through the appropriate process. What we find in our historic districts is many people are working on the weekends simply to avoid the permit process from the beginning. So we're trying to reduce the barrier to engaging with town staff by reducing that cost to 0. We still have, all of the review powers and the after the fact COA is primarily the tool that we use to fine people for doing work that was unapproved. We find in many cities in North Carolina, they don't have costs for their COAs. And I think the primary reason being, if you buy a house in a historic district, you know you're going to have to spend a lot of money anyway to make sure that you preserve those features of the home. So we don't want to add an additional burden with that cost.
So tell me, on average, what are we averaging a year with our current fee structure, specifically for COAs and revenue generation?
I think we projected that out for last year. Do you have that in the budget?
Well, it's not gonna be specific for COAs, on our,
It's all putting together with like.
it's a number we can find. It's gonna take
Right,
a little research.
Right, that's what I'm wondering, is if it really,
It doesn't bring in a significant amount of revenue. Where we're going to see revenue from fees is going to be rezonings, special use permits, even zoning permits are currently $40. I think we're changing it to $50. But I think the policy from the Historic Preservation Commission, in fact, I believe that the HPC in their annual goals approved the idea of reducing the COA cost to 0. They don't want to. Their goal is not to get
Were you there?
a revenue from the town.
I missed that meeting. I never heard that.
You must have been
Um,
sleeping.
I think that might have been I can check back on the minutes and I can get. that
Yeah,
to you.
yeah. I mean, but I've heard the argument before about how people are working on weekends just to avoid any scrutiny by the town, and I think that's one of the reasons why they should pay something for CFA. At least they know that we're out there and that we're looking at them, and that they can't go but so far without coming directly to the Stark Preservation Commission, HPC.
I guess the
So-
better question is, should we be not charging a permit fee, but requiring, or the certificate of appropriateness, but increasing the fine if you don't have a certificate
Yeah,
of
I mean,
appropriateness?
Well,
Well, they got $250 for after the fact. Is that what that's for?
Yeah.
yeah, but that creates more of a punitive type of situation than the way I'm suggesting it. You know, of course, if you say, "Oh, caught you," now you got to pay. We're just trying to say, look, we're here for a reason. We're here to help guide you through the preservation process, and for whatever, $10, $20, whatever it is, it lets you know that we're here. We have some materials at the commission that we can give you to help guide you to do things right, so you don't have to work on weekends and nights and stuff like that to avoid us. And at the same token, you really don't want people doing a lot of stuff after the fact, because then a lot of people become very disgruntled and they say, well, the hell with it, I won't even do it at all. You know, and then you got another abandoned house or something, you know, so.
We could certainly,
But I
keep the
certainly
fee the same.
don't remember the commission approving a no fee structure. You might be right.
I believe
I
we
don't
did talk
remember.
about it during
Not
our-
at any
our
meeting
goal
that
session.
I've been at. Excuse me?
I believe we did talk about it during our goal session. We can certainly, the board can keep the fee the same, but I think what we find across municipalities in North Carolina that have historic districts, there's a trend to eliminate those fees with the understanding that owning a historic home is an expense in its own right. But, you know, I'll certainly, you know,
I
the
guess
direction of the
my
board.
preference would be, we need to verify if it's been run through the HOA or the
HPC.
the HPC, because if they've already bought into it, I would hate for our board to go back on that. But if it hasn't been addressed by them, then I think it's a different conversation.
I think it was addressed at the planning, some of the planning meetings, because I seem to remember that we talked at some of the planning meetings when we were talking about the zoning, the, uniform, UDA.
I don't think the planning board weighed in on the certificate of appropriateness fees. They did review the fee schedule that Mr. Flo presented to us.
Because we thought that, or there was a thought process that some of our fees were out of line in relation to surrounding areas.
Yes, and in fact, what we did, the fee schedule that you see, just shifting a little bit from the HBC,
Sorry.
the zoning fees and the subdivision fees that you find in the proposed fee schedule are based on the fee schedule that Mr. Flo presented, but then we also did a comparative analysis between what other regional towns our size are charging for fees. We looked at, I think, Landis, China Grove, Granite Quarry, Rockwell, and we took down some of those costs that Mr. Flo recommended so that we're not overcharging based on what we find across the regional average.
Sorry.
Yeah, so, yeah, we can find that out. I'm pretty, yeah. I'll go along with, if in fact they, HPC said that, then I'll go with that, you know.
Okay, and if they didn't, what's the board's preference?
Well,
I say I'd go
Uh,
$10.
Patty and I served on the Historic Preservation Commission back in 2003, 2004. And I remember, you know, this being addressed back then. You want to encourage people to make the appropriate and proper repairs. You don't want them coming in on the weekend and, you know, doing it behind everybody's back. Just, you know, that is clandestine, and it's like you're trying to get away with something. And then hopefully that the commission doesn't come back and sock you with a fine because you've done something inappropriate. And then as was said, you wind up, with a very disgruntled homeowner. I think there ought to be either some type of flat fee, maybe a small one, but people need to realize, we have the largest contiguous historic district in North Carolina. And if you purchase a home and you need to make repairs, there are procedures that you have to follow. You just can't go and randomly, work on your house. So that it's, I guess, not necessarily a watchdog, but again, there's got to be this rapport between the commission and the homeowners so that they understand that, there are guidelines, just like, anywhere else living in their town, just like a lease law.
Right.
People move into our town all the time. They don't have a clue about our lease laws and things like that.
Right.
And
a lot of
again,
people
it goes
don't
back
know.
to a communication process. I think in the past we've done a terrible job of communicating with people that have bought houses or rented property here, and when we just need to do a better one. Hopefully, with the upgrade on our website, if that does come to pass sooner than later, but people will know where to go. They want it. It will make them want to come before the HPC and say,
Right.
"Look, I need to do this." Where's your pamphlet? Where's your
And that reminds me, will that website allow people to be able to go on there and do their requests, to be able, that's,
would hope
that
so.
website's going to do?
That's what it's supposed
My
to do.
understanding of the software that we're purchasing, both for code enforcement and for permitting, will include an online portal
That's
where
good.
we can customize as many online permit applications as we want. And you can either download a PDF and submit a paper copy, or you can actually fill it out online and submit it, and then we would get emailed a form so they don't have to use any paper at all.
So I might note that is part of the budget request of the software improvements, and perhaps we think about fees and what used to be involved in permit processes, and we're trying to move to this streamlined electronic process that will involve hopefully less paper and less expense really from a material sense. And perhaps that's part of the spirit of what some of this new fee structure is getting at.
But what I could do, just to make sure that we're not, I want to make sure that the HPC, I'll consult on what our annual goals. We did both an annual goal setting and a priorities workshop. I'll check the minutes to make sure that the reduction to COA was something that the HPC approved. I'll also consult with the HPC chair between now and next week to make sure that we have that.
Fine.
And that being the case, if they did not take it under consideration, what does the board propose? I mean, yes,
I could comment, about the sort of the nominal fee structure, the $10 fee for a COA. Kyle's right, I think the thinking is to mitigate any obstacles that might, be perceived by the public, but in reality, if you have it that low, by the time the staff processes and it goes to finance, take it to the bank, we're losing money.
yeah.
So it's better to be zero. On projects of magnitude where people are doing stuff like they're adding plumbing or additions or building new buildings, that sort of thing, they have to get zoning permits in order to get the building permit. And the budget recommendation is to increase the zoning permit from $40 to $50. So there's an opportunity to recoup some development costs, permitting revenue, I suppose. But if you're gonna have a COA permit, I think it would be worth discussing, at least making it large enough to where the town's not losing money on collecting it. So
The current year's fee schedule is $0 for routine work, $10 for minor work, and $20 for major work for the historic COAs.
I'll give an example that's maybe not a good example, but we do have a permit for dumpsters. That's $5. I know we're losing money on processing dumpster fees, but the fact that the town requires them, allows the staff to converse with the property owner so they're not blocking the street or leaving it in the front yard for 4 months and that sort of thing. So there are some advantages to having that nominal fee. So this is a discussion that's
Yeah.
certainly, worth having.
Plus, you have to admit that a lot of realtors, when they're selling some of these houses, they're not informing these individuals that they're in a historic district. You know,
And they
so
should.
they start making changes
Yeah.
even before thinking about checking with the town to find out if there's anything that I shouldn't be doing to this house. Like that person with that ceramic tile on the front of their building. You know what I'm saying? So I think I think as Jonathan was leading up to, if anything, the same fee schedule that we had before, 0, 0, 10, and 20 is, I think that's fine. Just keep it consistent. If in fact the commission has not previously made a determination otherwise.
Pat, you had a comment?
The one thing I would say is that I have an acquaintance who cut a tree in her yard that was it was in danger of falling in the house or falling on the house, and they didn't realize that they had to have a permit to cut that tree, and so they were fined after the fact and left a really unhappy feeling with them. Because, I mean, you know, in addition to paying for having the tree all done, then, you know, they get fined and they've got to put something back there. So, you know, having at least a nominal fee might make people aware of the fact that there are some restrictions. You know, but we need to publicize that. We need to let people know that.
Yeah, the publicity and education is important.
Yeah.
And the last thing I had about fees, I think there was something in regards to getting an accident report from the police department. I can't find it here, but it mentioned something about there was a fee for doing that. But the
$2.
person has to do it by mail. And I thought, you know, it's so antiquated that by the time I mean, some people in a car accident is gonna look for a police report that same day so they can contact the insurance company that day or the next day or whatever. And for a person to only be able to pick up accident report by mail, I think that was kind of
What are you saying? It's too low or too high?
no, it wasn't a number. The fact that you can only get it by mail. You can't, you can't walk into the police station or into town hall and say, can I get a copy of the accident that I had yesterday?
And pay
You know,
for it up
whatever.
front?
Yeah.
Is that what? How are they able to collect the reports?
And that does not reflect a change in the fee schedule. Folks come in and request
No,
them.
procedure.
So it's
I'm talking
so
about
is it
procedure, not the
$2?
fee.
No, I think that this is speaking to if somebody requests it by mail, that would be the fee.
Okay, so it's free if they come in.
Wait a minute.
Unless we charge them 25 cents a page for Xerox copies.
But
I
to
don't
actually,
Oh,
if they want us to mail it to them, that's the charge to mail it.
Yes, I believe that's my interpretation of what's existing in the fee schedule.
Yes, we're charging $2 for mail. And to be very honest, when a citizen walks in, normally we don't charge them as taxpayers for that report.
Right.
But insurance companies, we are charging.
Okay.
Good.
Oh, come on.
Oh, so they
Poor
can
insurance
come right in
company.
and get it the same day.
Those
Okay.
poor
Yeah.
insurance
I
companies.
thought it was only, they can only request it. It says police reports, request by mail.
So if somebody requests that it be that we mail it to them,
Then we charge.
then we
Oh, okay.
charge.
Okay, that's different. Okay, all right.
so the question is $2 enough to mail that? I mean,
Yeah, stamp bill, let's take
well, it
expense.
depends, but it depends on how
Going
big
up.
the report is.
Price
So,
going
you
up
know,
here.
if you go online with anybody else, they're charging like $5, $10.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I know I went through the little toll bridge up in Virginia, coming from Virginia Beach, and I got slapped with $35 to get the little paper to mail back. So I don't know. Look,
It's with the wrong way.
it's my story.
You
And
went
I'm
the wrong
sticking with it.
She had a friend to pick up and with
All
her.
right.
I went,
But
All
I
right.
think, I think that.
So we're good with that? Okay.
what you,
What else did you have, Bob?
I think that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Morgan, bouncing over to you.
The previous discussions concerning the budget in terms of the allocation for events, that was the main thing that I wanted to discuss. So it's
Okay.
already been covered. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Ms. Hovis?
no, I got some things. Mhm. Okay, so the first is going to be the motor vehicle tax. I don't know if you're already aware, but somebody like me who owns like 4 vehicles, and I'm already paying where it says on personal property for taxes with Rowan County and Spencer. And keep in mind, not every city in Rowan County is doing it. We're doing it. I know Salisbury does it. But all I'm saying is to get hit $10 more to each one of my vehicles just because I live in Spencer, I can't even imagine for somebody that is either indigent or for someone who is on Social Security to have to live through that. We are already getting ready to raise taxes because of that plaza, and let alone this idea, the money is going to come up with about $20,000. This is a spit in the bucket to that Powell bill.
This one is.
So I'm trying to figure where you're going with that.
So this, and again, we are not recommending a change in the tax rate over our debt service for Park Plaza. Tax rate recommendation has not changed from year to year. So just to start with that, but the vehicle tax is something that's authorized to local governments up to $30. Any amount over $5, for example, this recommendation, it would be for $10. $5 would be unrestricted. It's just a general fund revenue. We would restrict $5 into the Powell bill fund. The Powell bill revenues are declining due to decrease in people pumping gas. And this is a way to make up about the same amount that we're losing in our Powell bill revenues. And also, we have a very limited ability to identify new revenue sources as local governments in North Carolina. So this is something that some of our peers are doing, and it was a recommendation.
Peter, I'm gonna tell you, I can't see sitting up on this board, and this is my second term, of taxing these people that live in this town, that pay you guys salary any more than what we're already doing to them in reference to all these projects that we've started up. And to let alone, and I know I was talking about myself, but I think of my mother, I think of people like Patty, I can think of people like Patricia. I mean, it's those things where is folks that, no, I will not think about you. No, you're sitting right here beside me, no. But peanut gallery over here. But it is one of those things that it's just for the community and for this board where we're already coming at and trying to, we're shaking and grooving. I mean, we're getting the things done, but to know that we're going to hit their pocket a little bit more, it's like we're doing a little bit more and a little bit more at them. I don't want to do that. We're going to need to find another way on my watch because it's going to be a no on my end. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but even for yourself personally, if you own multiple vehicles, and if on the law enforcement end, when I have to go and pay for that inspection sticker, I already got to go get it inspected. That costs money. Then the sad part about it is if my vehicle is either a vehicle that has a luxury tax, you're getting slapped with that, and let alone paying Rowan County and paying Spencer still. So you got those 3 things, and then you're gonna put $10 more on the top of that too. I mean, that's the straw that's gonna break the horse's back right there.
You
So
gotta realize there's a lot of people just came through a very difficult year with this pandemic, and the feelings of government and how people feel about government imposing things on them. And if the net result of that is like you're only looking to get $20,000 out of it based on the number of vehicles in the town, it almost boils down to almost like a nuisance tax, and you're just going to get people all riled up over $10. Some people will fight you harder over $10 than if you stole $1,000 out of their bank account or something like that. So,
It's true, because this is,
Yeah.
that'll be a cycle
I
that'll
couldn't go
start
for
and
that
it
either.
won't stop. It'll keep going. I know you,
wrong.
here he goes again.
People, they love their dogs and they love their cars. Okay, that's
And
one thing I
guns.
found out coming
You
down
do
here.
love your car, don't you?
They love their dogs and love their cars, and you try to impose or come in between that relationship. You got a long way to hope. So I would say, we need to kill that tax, that nuisance tax, and it doesn't help to say that, well, we saved you on, we're not going to raise your property tax, but we're going to charge you $10 for every car that you have. I don't see it.
You know, at the end of the day, if they can't make that payment, law enforcement gets them for what we call DWLR, driving while license revoked, and we get them because they can't afford to pay for that darn inspection sticker. So why do we need to impose more problems on these people? So that's where I'm at with that.
Other thoughts? I mean, this is a big item, so I think we probably actually need to go one by one and just
Well,
let us know if you are for or against it.
yeah, I think about my neighbor sitting next door to me. I mean, I've got one vehicle, and $10 is not gonna make or break me. Some months it's gonna be tighter than others, but yeah. But I think about my neighbor who's sitting there, and this guy works his butt off. I mean, he works 7 days a week. He's working at a regular job 6 days, and he's coming home and working on the weekend doing everything at his house. And they have 4 vehicles, I think, or maybe 5, because I think he has a grandchild who is now living with them, or another family member who has a vehicle. And she works, he works, but they both work all the time. And I remember him telling me that he used to live in one of those little tiny houses up at the top of my street. And he lived there for a while and saved his money and was able to buy the house in the lot beside me. And they have a lot with a swimming pool and a house. And they work on it all the time. And I think about people like that it might be a burden to. I don't know. I mean, $20,000 is in the scheme of things is not very much money. When we're talking a $3 million budget, almost a $4 million budget, $20,000 is not very much money.
And I think you raise a good point in that, we collectively as a staff and a board can work to attract an industry or something like that that's going to increase our tax base much more than $20,000 and be much less of a burden to our citizens.
It's a spit in the bucket.
So, yeah, that's a good point. Yep. All right, Mayor Pro Tem, we know where Bob stands.
Well, I see pros and cons on both sides, but there are people out there that have a lot of, I won't say a lot, but some animosity towards government anyway, and the intrusion that government is making into their lives.
right.
And I can just see some people in town, and I've lived here my whole life, and I already know what some of them are going to say, and they're not going to be happy. And it's not the $10 is not the issue. It's just the fact another tax. It might as well be $100. They'll take some people will take and I'm not afraid of those people, and I think we can justify it. But I think they'll get miffed because some people still miss the class. And that's going to start that up. This is just a really bad year to implement a new tax. So I would have to vote no.
Mr. Morgan?
I feel the same way. I would hope that there are other ways to help fund, pump some money into, because we need to maintain the streets. So I would like to see it come from somewhere else other than putting vehicle tax. So it's a good subject that you brought.
And if people want to help the town and they don't want to pay a tax, they can donate to the hometown holidays. Send your $10 to that.
They can donate to the town.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to get to a point, maybe the board, future boards, as yeah, that when we were talking about the zoning, ordinances and everything to be changed, we've got to attract more people into the town. And, we need businesses, but we need people. And it's one of those, double-edged swords. You can't go too far because you eventually have to raise taxes. But, on the same token, you want to, spend the monies that you have in the budget wisely. So this is, one of those things that, and I'm glad Sharon brought it up. I just think that, and I agree with the others. I think we've got to find another way to, help fund our payment rather than, charge people that ride them. That would be comparable, if you want to run the rope out, a little bit more, that would be like, installing a toll road, basically.
Well, and I think one of the things with the budget that we can do is just scale back on Powell bill spending for this upcoming year, because our expected revenue is less. The hope would be as people start driving more and that sort of thing, and NCDOT gets their act together, that we will start to see an increase again back in the revenue back to previous levels. Okay, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with the group as far as that goes. Of course, one thing that upsets people just as much is why their streets patched and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a double sword. I mean, you lose both ways or you win both ways. So you got to be careful about this. I kind of agree with everybody's thinking that financially, this year hasn't been a good year. Hopefully things will things are opening up and we can see brighter lights ahead of us. So I don't think this is something that we need to tackle at this time. I just, like you said, maybe we'll just have to cut down our spending and people will have to understand that we're doing this for them, but some of the roads might have to suffer for another year or so. But, like I said, you win in this case and you lose in this case. So you got to be careful.
There's a balance.
Yeah.
Understood. All right. Well, there you have it.
Okay, now lastly is, you came up with, the cellular phones for the police. And, it's obvious it's gonna be a no for me, because what you're gonna do is, and I did this thing where I talked about how cellular phones, first of all, the DA's office, they can't stand them, because everybody knows that if you get a real good defense attorney, they're gonna know that cell phones, you can manipulate them. You can put little smiley faces, little rabbit ears, big teeth on, you know how you can do all those things. You can.
I don't know how to do that.
And besides,
She'll train
if you
you.
do, I believe it. But if you do go with cellular phones, first of all, and it can be done, but you're gonna have to implement it in policy, okay? There is a statute, Murray versus Carlsbad case back in 2010, and State versus Ortiz case back in 2009. Those cases made it where if you're going to give cellular phones to officers to use, you will have to have it implemented in policy. And the reason why you do is because if they take a picture of that crime scene or whatever, or if they're using it to make phone calls on something that's investigative, or there's something that's got to be work related, that phone will be seized. It will be used, and they will go through that officer's phone, whether it's intimate calls, personal calls, or real calls. So if officers are actually using their cellular phones on duty, they're going to need to cut back on doing that, calling the victim, or even they can get away with calling communications, of course, because communications is going to have it recorded when they call. But when they're calling victims or whatever, they're putting themselves also in a position. There is that thing also too, what I write here, that the whole point of this is to reduce if they take a picture of the crime scene, for a good example. Not saying that our officers would do it, but they go and share that photo outside with the family member or friends or something. Whatever they do with that photo that is a crime scene photo is now, you see where I'm going with this. So, huge. So no, it's a no for me on cellular phones, but most of all, that's a stipend that would possibly go between what, $30 to $80. I don't know what you would pay them, but there again, there's more money into something that don't need to go there. We just paid right at, what was it, $60,000 for those body cameras. Those cannot be manipulated. If they do need to freeze them for whatever crime or whatever took place, they can use those photos because it timestamps them and they know they can't manipulate that. But cellular phones, no, because if you do it for them, you better do it for everybody else too. I've already told you guys now, we've already looked out for the police department. We need to look out for fire and we need to look out for the public works guys. It's starting to be one of these things where it looks like we're piling everything on the police department. And we do appreciate police, and chief, we do. You know I do. I'm one of you. But at the same time too, I'm one of these people that want to be consistent and fair up on this board while I'm up here. I'm Alderwoman Hovis, and I believe in looking out for everybody as a team, not just for one slice of the pie. There's three other slices of the pie in administration. They better get a phone too. Phones are made for, if you do it, it needs to be for like Chief James. He needs a phone. Joel needs a phone. They're supervisors. They're on duty 24. They're salary. So they got to pick up and be able to answer. I know, Chief James, for you, I'm sure if that phone goes off 3 o'clock in the morning, you got to answer it. So yeah, the town needs to be paying for that. But for the officers, no. All they do is put themselves in a compromised position. But most of all, like I said, if we do it for them, we got to do it for everybody else. So it's a no.
So
it's a
my
big
understanding,
liability.
Peter, the estimate on cell phones was $9,000 for the police department.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, to me, that all but balances the budget. That and the reduction in the power bill spending.
It's, those two things would be fairly close in the general fund.
So there goes that $10 that you're wanting out of everybody else's pocket. You can go ahead and use it all for that idea.
Any other input from the board on that? You want to go ahead, Peter?
Well, just to make sure everybody understands, the departmental request from police was to purchase cameras for officers to have for use on crime scenes as things happen. And when I saw that request, that transitioned to the recommendation as you see it with providing the phones, because officers are using their phones to conduct town business as we know it now. And they should, in my opinion, either be compensated for that or have a town issued phone or be told to stop using it for town business.
I said, what do you mean cameras in the request for cameras? All the officers have body cameras.
Chief, I don't know if you want to come up, but
These would be separate cameras.
This would be if
For like
somebody
evidence
has
and things like
a
that.
broken window and
Like
a
stereo
responding
camera.
officer needs to take a picture of it, they can have it with a body cam.
And there's nothing wrong with them having the smaller cameras, because that's what we did over there. They have the smaller cameras, but it's not going to be $9,000 worth of something small that they can have. You know, I mean, a small camera nowadays can run you about $200 or $300 per camera if you get a nice one. It don't even have to be that much, but if you want to get one for the guys to have as equipment, but that should go in his equipment cost, and that's something that he can do at his own discretion. Is just this part where you're sitting up here wanting to do the cash monies out for them using the phone, when I told you again, there's case law where they're not supposed to. And if they're going to make phone calls to victims or whatever, I know it's easier to do it from their cell phones, but it's plausible for them to do it back here at the office. And anything they do on their cell phone is what they do. It's their decisions. Because liability wise, when it comes down to the town, it's going to put us in a compromise. I just gave you case law. Now I'm talking from the law enforcement end of it, Peter. You're going by how you feel and what you think how they should do. And I'm telling you, no, that's not right. 31 years of this, it's not okay. If my guys did it, they did it on their own accord and they did what was easier for them to do. But the right thing to do, which is always hard, is to do it this way by law.
So
Case
Chief,
law.
What was with the request for the cameras? Can you talk about that and what the requested budget was for that?
Yes, originally years ago, we bought some digital cameras. They've got SD cards. You can upload those in a computer. You can do exactly what you just described. You can share them, and you've done the same thing. But another issue was expressed to me by the guys. They're currently using, I text, and any of you are welcome to look at my personal phone. I text these guys working all the time. When they're working, a citizen may call me and say, hey, I see so-and-so, and rather than me type the comm center, I might send them a text message on their personal phone and say, go to 411 South Iredale, I've got a report of such and such. So that's how I communicate with the officers. That's much easier, saves a lot of time, doesn't type the 911 center. The concern came to be that they're also using those phones as cameras, their personal phone. So just like what you relayed, they use their personal phone, and the question comes from the defense attorney, I want to see the source of that original photo. So we make sure none of that manipulation happened. So then we've got an officer that, out of goodwill, is using their phone that they paid $1,000 for to help them in their job, and their personal phone gets seized because that defense attorney wants to see that original photo. So one thing we wanted to prevent was that from happening. But regardless of what you decide, we need a way for them to, body cams are not suited, and File and I just had this conversation today. They're very granular. When you try to take a still picture, they're not going to be as good. And when we submit a felony case summary, we can do regular photos through evidence.com where the DA can get them. These phones actually make a better photo than digital cameras do. They're much easier to use and upload, into the felony case summary. So that's part of it. We can do it with a digital camera, but we still got, and it may be that public works guys use their phones too. That would be a question for Joel. But I don't think anybody uses their personal resource any more than police officers do each day.
All I'm saying, Chief, is it's case law that they do not want officers to use cellular phone pictures. And to have it where your officers can go ahead and have a camera in their car, that would be more acceptable than using a cellular phone. With that, like I said, there is actual case law reference to that. That is not okay.
So Chief, what was the budget request on just the cameras?
I've got it in the back of the room, or they may have it here. And what we experienced with those digital cameras, they put the batteries in a little door that you got to flip open. We even bought new doors and replaced all those doors to try to save money. So we've got cameras with little red doors that were made in China that they're not holding
So
up
why
either.
aren't you're getting the little cheapies? Why aren't you getting the ones that have the photo lenses to it?
So the request was for $1,200, 10 cameras at 120 apiece.
I mean, I think that's reasonable. It takes care of the liability issue. It doesn't address the fact that they are still using their personal cell phones for communication, with the team. But from
Here's the bad part
perspective-
about that. Now, I'm sorry, John, to cut you off, but Chief, I get where you saying, because I was guilty of it too. But it still puts our guys in a compromised position. At the end of the day, if they get over there to 411 Iredale Avenue, and something turns out on that call, it was better that it was of record going to communications than it is you typing in, sending them over there to that direction. It makes it where it's not transparent of what you're doing, and if they need backup, they done walked into a situation. It was what I used to get on the girls at the front office. They'll sit up there and they'll call me. They go, "Hey, chief, we got so and so, and they need somebody to come out to their house. They're over there right now." I said, "No, you have that person back up and call 911. Don't call me."
Well, it's still a record. They still, if they go to a residence, they still tell the comm center, you know, I'm at
They check off at it.
305 Iredale and this is what I'm here for. So it's still documented in that way. To be honest, it's just easier for me to text that officer. And I know, you know how people are with cell phones, especially people younger than me. They've got that thing. It's part of their skeletal system or something.
See, it's a matter of what's easier for you or what's costing the community $10 more per vehicle kind of thing. That's where I'm at with this thing. We gotta, and that's why I was telling you and anybody else in this room, we gotta look at the overall picture. Is not, and you should do what you're doing, by the way, Chief. You need to be asking for everything you can get, because you know you're gonna get a few no's. You've already got a couple yeses. So just be ready for some no's. And to me, it's a no for cell phone, because that's something that you chose to do. And if you do, and if this board does go with this, if y'all do agree to go with this, I can tell you this now, and factually, I've got it right here. There's a GS statute. You will need to put it in policy that you guys are using phones, and implement that policy to show the usage of that phone and what it's for and why, just in case somebody steps across the line and do use it or have it where somebody got to see a photo at home of a crime scene or whatever happened, and then it got out reference to something that's going to put a liability on the town.
That's where I was going. Is there, do we have a opinion from, can we get an opinion from D's as to make sure that we're not getting ourselves in a
Believe it or not, I went
twit
to the
over this?
League of Municipalities and I spoke with, and I left his name out. I actually have it. Well, see, I left my cell phone in the car.
So
But I
just
spoke
from-
with
just from
one of the
point of view of-
attorneys up there at the League of Municipalities, and he brought this to my attention about it being a liability on the town. But if they implement a policy, and if we approve for that, but they have to implement a policy just the same way as a media policy, where when the guys want to go on Facebook, there's a media policy reference to the information that they provided and they put out. But that liability still stretches, and we're taking that for granted, reference to going, well, we're going to take it upon that officer to make sure that he doesn't what he does do. That's too much. We're already doing a lot when we let them take home cars.
So we can definitely do that, but based on what I'm hearing, I mean, I think the liability issue is resolved if we fund the digital cameras in this fiscal year and not fund the cell phones. And it's a savings of $7,800.
I don't know if that relieves the liability. It depends on how those phones are going to be used in the field.
No, he's saying
I'm
we're
saying
not going to do
not
that.
buying the phones.
He's saying not do it.
Getting
Oh,
digital
digital
cameras,
Just give him
which will cost $1,200, and they have their own little camera in
Yeah.
the car,
No,
and it's going to save $7,800.
I'm still saying you can't. If you already have a mechanism that records the officer's involvement on any particular scene.
That's a video recording, though.
Through a video cam, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So, which is already part of policy, and it's been used by many police departments across the country. And it's been court tested and acceptable and all that stuff. So now you're talking about bringing in another possible evidentiary device that could get dragged into the middle of a court case where, like you were saying, that if one of the officers takes home a picture of a person who died on the scene and shows it to somebody else, oh, I know that guy, oh, let me call. And he winds up calling his family and saying, I just saw a picture of your boyfriend dead on the ground. You know, could be a lawsuit or something like that, could it not?
Well, and we have policies that would prohibit that already. Anything of a confidential nature, they cannot share. And if they do, They
That's
will
a
be
personnel
disciplined.
issue.
They know that.
And Bob, I want to share a personal experience from my ride along where a camera was absolutely needed. And it was actually a mutual aid response over to East Spencer, happened to be a resident of our town, but somebody was driving under the influence, was driving under the influence, and was discovered to have a mobile meth lab in their vehicle. Well, what do they have to do? They take pictures of what evidence they uncover there on the scene in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? They have to set it on the hood. They have to take a picture of all of it and document it. No body camera is going to be able to document that. You have to have that photo to be able
So the
to.
whole interaction of that officer, did he have a body cam with
Yeah.
him?
Yeah.
And so while that whole thing was going on, whether it's in the conversation or whether it was in fact grainy film or whatever being recorded by the cam, I mean, he turned it on, right?
Yeah, body cameras were on. Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that the photograph would have been legally more acceptable.
It shows
Then-
the evidence that was in the vehicle.
Well, why couldn't he? Why couldn't he show on the
You have
cam,
to
on
have the
video
complete
cam?
picture because the video camera is not going to.
It's too grainy.
Right. The
Uh,
quality of a digital
what he's
picture
trying to explain,
versus
Bob, is what we're trying to do is get this personal phone out of the picture, okay? And put cameras with the officers, okay, that they can carry along as part of their equipment, in addition to their body cam, okay?
Yeah.
You're gonna need close-up, quality, clear, photographs for any kind of evidence or anything, details of assault victims, things like that. You can't
Right.
really get that on a body cam. So that, we're trying to give them another tool in their toolbox without getting into this cellular phone thing that can just, as Sharon said, could, really cost us in terms of liability. The camera itself does not do that. The camera just gives you a better tool to take evidence, photographs, okay? And that can be taken, and, taken to the crime lab, no problem. You just got what, $120, $100 camera that, get
And the
enough.
best part about it
Okay,
is that
okay.
SD card that he's talking about. Regardless, it is something that they can go ahead and put into the evidence bag and put away. Those cameras they'll always take with them. It's not like they're going to delete that out of those cameras, those personal cameras. And those need to go into evidence right then and there. It doesn't need to stay with the officer. It doesn't need to stay on a cell phone. There's too much liability with cell phones.
Right.
And if you know anything about cellular phones, you do know that anybody can tap into those things no matter what. I mean, if you haven't ever gotten scammed off of your phone because you used your phone, I don't know what planet you lived on, because they get us police officers too. And it does happen. And so you got the dark web kind of stuff. But I don't even want to go into that. All I'm just saying is, long story short, I agree with the mayor. Cameras will be sufficient. I think cellular phones are out. It's just too big a liability. You're on a slippery slope with cellular phones.
So what kind of cost we're talking about on that?
$1,200 as opposed to $9,000.
For the whole, for the department? Yeah. Okay.
And I said it was last thing, but I got to ask you about the library part, because the people that live there at right there near the library, I know they don't park on the road. They actually are using the parking spaces inside the library park to, I guess, get off the road, and it makes sense a little bit. You have library park fees in the fee schedule. Is that for at the time when they're having events? Or is that going to be or is there going to be something reference to the after hours of the residents?
This is not a change in the fee schedule. I believe this is if somebody wanted to rent the park, including the gazebo, for a private event.
Okay, so it's not going to be pertaining to the people, because you currently have very few people, but there are some residents that live. I mean, it's one of our ex aldermen, and he and his wife actually park in there, and so I just wanted to know So when I saw this on the fee schedule, I'm like, wow, y'all been ready to start charging $50 to park in there.
It's, no, and again, this is not a change to the fee schedule. This was something that was already in there. And it's
Just like,
related to it.
just like renting the ballpark, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Or the stand back park for picnics.
Okay,
All right,
that's all I got.
thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Everything I had questions about have been covered, and a lot more also, so.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, I've been
I think he
taking
just
notes.
think it's getting late.
No, but, no, overall, I was very pleased with the budget, liked the way it was presented. I liked the article in the paper too, it was good. And I think these things that we did decide to work on, I think it was right on the money with.
So, in summary, I think there's a little bit of work to prepare for next Tuesday. But what I can see is we have reduced our potential revenue by 20,000 by removing the fees. What we're saying is we will reduce our Powell bill, revenue by 10,000, so we need to reduce our Powell bill spending by 10,000. We're reducing cell phones to the police department budget by 9,000. Well, we're reducing it by $7,800 because instead of 9,000, we're going to make that 1,200. We've asked for 3,000 additional dollars for our events under the governmental body. And so that leaves us then with a $5,200 gap that we need to figure out to balance the budget. I'd say that's pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from y'all two? I guess I'll say thanks for the time that you put into working through it and presenting us with this and the time you've spent working with us tonight through this.
And I thank God for people who love numbers.
There's the little lady right there. They're on the two corners.
So any,
Bean counters.
any questions?
No, what we'll do is, take your feedback, and on Tuesday, you will have an updated, ordinance for your consideration that reflects, this feedback. And of course, you'll also conduct the public hearing and choose your path forward from there.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you all. All right. We will move on and review here quickly our agenda for next Tuesday. We will have a busy meeting. Do I have a volunteer that'll do the invocation Tuesday night?
Steve. Steve said he'll do it.
Mr. Morgan said he'd do it.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. I did hear him say that.
Okay, good. You okay with that, Sam?
Oh, yeah.
All right. All right, let's talk about recognitions. Do we have recognitions we'd like to make this month?
I have.
Okay.
I want to go ahead and do one for the veterans for this past Memorial Day. We need to recognize anybody as far as staff and community and board members, Bish, reference to, you know, their duty of service. So I'd like to say something.
Okay.
I would like to recognize all the people who cleaned up the streets and the people who volunteered for the community cares.
Okay.
Day. I have a list of names, so I don't know. Mr. Francis, do you have a list?
I believe
of the
Stacy
people?
has a list.
Oh, Stacy,
We
have
have
a
it.
list. If you did a list, that would be nice. That'd be great. Thank you.
I can tell you I've never moved in Oregon before, but I did.
Oh,
It was interesting. All right, any other recognitions? Okay. All right, so moving on, we'll have public comment, then we'll have our public hearing for the proposed agenda for next fiscal year. And then we will have our consent agenda items. So as we go through this, please let me know what items we want to add to the consent agenda.
Mayor?
Yes.
I don't know if now might be an appropriate time regarding adjustments to the agenda. We do have a few items, and I continue to do that.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Yeah, if you'll go ahead and give us a review of what those additions.
So we have a few items that we became aware of. We want to make sure to include on Tuesday's agenda with your consideration. One, Mr. Morgan, I believe, may be talking about this related to a street closure request for the event on the 26th.
Right. I was told by our town planner that, and also by Chief James, that I need to bring a proposal before the board in order to close the street, 100 block of Fifth Street from noon until 9 p.m. So
Okay.
need to do that.
My suggestion, if the board's agreeable, that that should be a consent agenda item.
Mhm.
Everybody agree?
I agree.
Okay.
Okay, and then, we are going to have, some additional, budget amendments. There is, one in the packet already. There's an additional project budget, ordinance that is going to establish the Yadkin River Project Fund that we mentioned earlier. And then, Faith, was there one additional on top of that, or? The Forestdale, so that's Powellville. Yes, so, and Joel, you'll be hearing from Joel about this, but, yes, a budget amendment related to the Powellville as well, so we'll be, with your permission, providing all of that.
Okay.
And then you do have before you, I believe, is that right, Stacy, the change order revision, should be there before you. Hopefully you see that. So we got a small revision to the change order past what was originally put in the packet. This was due to some of the steel that was left out from Vertex when they sent it through originally. And it was part of the corrections needed to the roof structure that was discovered by special inspections and the structural engineer. So it's a slight revision to the overall change order request on the Park Plaza.
What are
What-
the big white things that are sitting out there in front of it now? It looks like
It's
big blocks
insulation,
of,
it's insulation
yeah.
for the roof.
oh, okay.
Yeah. They
Okay.
put tapered insulation on there to
Okay.
slope it.
So just that's not a new item, but just an update to
Okay.
existing item.
And that change order, the reason for that additional steel, when they got in there and started taking off the roof and uncovered everything, they realized that the roof was effectively, at the wall being held up by 2x4s instead of steel angle.
Yeah. Hope they're good to avoid.
I don't know if they were, but,
Actually, they weren't even 2x4s, were they? They were like
1x6.
1x4s or something.
Tuba
Yeah.
dudes or something.
Yeah.
Balsam.
All I'm gonna say is when that
No,
park
Buffalo
plaza was
wouldn't
opened, I was in high school. So that's been some good holding up.
It's only been a year or two ago, right?
Oh,
and
had my
then
first rectum.
You must be pretty old.
we are recommending, which this, I guess, transition to where the mayor was heading. If you turn the page, the backside of the agenda, we are recommending pulling number 9 from the agenda due to actually some progress today on this matter with the property owner, and we're not no longer recommending the board considering this action at this time.
Good, that's good.
Okay, so based on that, I would propose to the board that these new budget ordinances, that we actually keep those, especially the emergency storm drain repair, so that we can hear the update on that, that we keep that as a regular agenda item along with the change order for Park Plaza.
Where you wanna put it?
My suggestion would be that we put the I would say we put it as right after number 18. The budget ordinance, 21-011. Put it right after 21-010. 18. And then our Park Plaza change order.
It's already noted on the.
Right, because this was just an update to it. Got it.
That's just some additional, you
Okay.
can replace your
And then project
On me.
budget ordinance 21-012 is the one to establish a project fund for the Yadkin River Trailhead. I would suggest that we make that a consent agenda item. It's creating it as a separate project, as Peter mentioned earlier.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Now, on 13 of the agenda, you got that considering adopting resolution 21009 for grant opportunities for the
That's
Yadkin River.
different.
It's gonna be different? Okay.
That's a grant, that's actual grant application.
Okay.
To hopefully, continue to build the project fund that we would like to set up.
Okay.
Speaking of grants, and, you know, pardon me for being out of, turn, the $750,000 grant, for rehab, is that moving along? Yeah, or can I, have we gotten started getting any requests, for applications?
I can speak to that.
Oh, right.
The-
Good.
That grant is actually on pause right now. It's not going to be a long pause. The Department of Commerce is administering that grant at the state level.
They've
I have
been talking to the people at the DOT, have
There you go. They have been in communication with me, essentially saying that because the Department of Commerce is focused on administering other COVID relief funds, they have not begun their one-on-one conversations with awarded municipalities yet. So we've submitted all the required documentation to get that started. What we're waiting on now is the go-ahead to begin project setup and early compliance monitoring. So that's actually, it's a 3-year grant. I know we want to get
Well,
started.
I might
quickly.
not be around by then. You know, we need to get going on this stuff.
We'll get started as soon as we can.
You can't kill old
I'm an old
grass.
man, you
There you
know,
go.
But
burning daylight.
in terms of how many citizens have reached out to me, I have a running list now, a spreadsheet of about
Good.
15 people.
Good.
And I have actually gone back to reach back out to the people who had contacted me months ago to let them know that they're still on the list. And I've been available to answer any questions that they have. And all the people that have reached out to me so far are committed. They want to apply when we get started.
Good.
Good,
Thank
good,
you.
good. That's great.
Thank
Very
you, thank you.
good. Thank you.
All right. All right, approval of minutes. Alderwoman Sledge has had a chance to review them, so we'll start with her. Any additional corrections?
Stacey, did you make that correction we talked about the other day? Okay.
I put in both for the ones that you sent over for animal, currently only have 5 songs.
Okay, I need to look at that again. There is, there is something that was left off on the minutes for, the call meeting on May the 27th. At the bottom of the first page, there is a portion of the sentence missing or something. Because the breakdown review of personnel budget recommendation.
And then there's a colon and nothing else on that.
Well,
Okay.
well, that's the,
No, that's for the.
that goes to the next page,
Got it.
but there's something that is missing. Use the $5 of the amount of POW bill funds to maintain the streets and to, I think it was to offset the reduction in POW bill funds anticipated, I think is the way I had it worded.
Okay,
Do you need me to correct that before our meeting?
I
Or
think,
can we just,
as long, we can, move it to the consent agenda with the understanding that that correction be made.
okay,
We'll make sure.
Okay?
Thank you.
I'll look back at my notes.
All right, so is everybody good then with that correction to move the minutes to the consent agenda?
Good.
Okay. Very good. We're removing item 9 at the request of the manager. Item 10, we will consider resolution 21-008, authorizing upset bid process for the sale of real property owned by the town. And that is,
Okay, so that will become number 9. Yes?
yes, and we will leave that so we can get an update on that. Again, that's an actual property in town that we've received an offer on, so we'll get an update and discuss that. Next item will become item 10. Let's consider awarding residential facade rehabilitation grant. So we will review and discuss that as well. Next item is receiving a presentation from planning staff on the Community Appearance Commission concept for a community garden. That will be a regular agenda item. Next item is considering adopting resolution 21-009 for grant opportunities for the Yadkin River Trailhead. Again, that will be a resolution and presentation update, I assume from Mr. Morris. Okay. We'll have our departmental reports, town manager report, and then we get into several of these ordinances. So the first is the Spencer Development Ordinance, and we've got 4 different motions in a packet that you have here. That was, yes, it's a loose packet. Yeah, and so this is based on the input and public hearing we held last Thursday and the work that our planning board has done, along with Kyle and also the folks from InFocus. And so Kyle, anything that we need to know in particular about that tonight, or will you be able to update us on Tuesday on that?
Actually, there is one change.
Okay.
And it was a last minute change. Actually, a couple hours ago, I received a call from one of the property owners in question. If you look at the first motion, there were 2 parcels that were going to be changed as part of this rezoning. The second parcel, 043006, talking about a change from SFR3 to Civic. That's actually a complicated parcel. It's a parcel divided into 2 distinct areas. One parcel is going to be part of the Standback Forest Three Rivers Land Trust project. The other parcel, the property owner reached out to me and said he wants to actually keep it in the SFR3 residential district with the idea of doing a subdivision on it. And then whatever parcel that's left over, he'll donate to the Three Rivers Land Trust. So what I would recommend is just cross that second part of the first motion out, because that's not going to be part of this rezone.
So does this apply to the new property that's being the expansion of the Standback Forest?
This is one property, a portion of which will end up being part of the Three Rivers Land Trust project. And a portion of it it's essentially going to be a subdivision in the future. The land will be divided up into separate parcels. But right now, the property owner wants to keep it in the SFR3 district because they own the entire parcel currently.
All right.
So that's the only portion of this that's going to be changed.
Okay, so we'll strike item 2 in that motion, motion 1, correct?
Yes, and we will keep the RMST to C29.
Okay. All right. Very good. Next item is considering adopting the fiscal year 21-22 budget ordinance and fee schedule. And so we will get that updated item, and that will be a regular agenda item. And then now we have budget amendment ordinance 21-010. Is attachment 11.
Yes, so this is related to the planner project and for expenses related to that.
And so there is no net impact to the budget.
It's just appropriating some of your contingency.
Okay. Do we want to move that to consent agenda?
Sure.
So budget ordinance 21-010 will be consent agenda. Then we have budget ordinance 21-011. It was in that loose stack of papers you had for the Powell bill. We will keep that so we can get an update from Joel on that project and what was needed. And then the next is to authorize the town manager to execute change order number 3 for Town Hall and Police Department. So we'll get an update on that as well. And then with that, that concludes all of the items unless board members have anything else in particular that we need to add to that. Yes.
Related to departmental reports and the Powell bill budget amendment, if you would like to hear from Joel this evening on Forestdale for a general update, he's able to provide that. If you prefer to wait till Tuesday, you can do that too. It's your preference.
I asked if we can wait till Tuesday, because I've got people just bothering me about that thing. They all need to hear it. You know, I don't want to make you say it twice, because you're going to have to do it again Tuesday.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Yeah, right there, Red Bull.
Yeah,
So-
he's old now.
One of the items too during the requests and comments by mayor and board members that we do need to touch base on
Stormwater drain.
is I do want to have a discussion because I know we've talked about it previously. It's come up regarding term limits and that sort of thing. I'm sorry,
There's, you may have skipped something on.
what did I skip?
Stacy asked me if you skipped number 4. In CDOT. The very, at the-
Number 4.
Item-
We can come back to that once we finish this.
We did. Yeah, we'll need to, yeah,
Oh,
we need
okay.
to circle. Yeah,
Okay.
I did. Sorry.
Oh, this right here.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Stacy. Keeping me straight. It's a hard job. So under comments by the mayor and board members, one of the things I know we've heard several is to just several comments that we need to begin a discussion relative to current term limits and potential for staggered terms. JD's will have some guidance on that process. Obviously, that's a lengthy process. We're not, if anything changes, we're not proposing to do that this election cycle. But it's something that we would need to get in place to have, to basically have, on the ballot, for community vote by this November, and then it would look to take effect, if anything, if they approve a change, would take effect the following 2-year cycle.
Yeah.
So Jay will provide some guidance on that. I think, there are benefits to keeping it like it is, but I think there are also a lot more benefits to looking at doing some type of staggered term, for consistency. So anyway, we'll start that discussion, if the board's agreeable to that, on Tuesday. Okay. All right, let's circle back to number 4 on our agenda for tonight. I'm sorry I skipped that.
Would you like for me to make that presentation?
I'll handle it this time, but maybe you can do it next.
Just check.
So we spent a lot of time tonight talking about budget and things that are going to cost the town.
You already know my feelings.
The NCDOT project we're talking about tonight would cost the town $0. South Salisbury Avenue is on track to be resurfaced and restriped in 2022-23. Another conversation that I had earlier today, I talked to the district engineer, Kelly Seitz. I got an update on the timeline. Initially, we were thinking it was going to happen next year, the next fiscal year, but it looks like it's going to be delayed because NCDOT is focused more on improvements to 150. But regardless of exactly when it happens, we are moving towards an NCDOT project on Salisbury Avenue. And eventually that will encompass all the way from the Salisbury border to the river. It may be in 2 separate years, so 1 year from Salisbury to Long Street, and then from Long Street to the river will be resurfaced. But what this presents to the town is an opportunity to change the traffic pattern if the governing board chooses to go that direction. Y'all are all familiar with Main Street in Salisbury. They're doing a lot of changes to the traffic pattern in Salisbury. They've reduced Main Street from 4 lanes to those 2 lanes, 1 in each direction with a center turning lane. That concept could be something that the town may want to explore here in Spencer. Now, I do know Mr. Morgan is one who has expressed concern about that, and there are concerns. We do have a major museum. We get a lot of visitors. There are major events. So there may need to be additional traffic studies done. But essentially, I wanted to update the board that this is something that we're going to have to make a decision on. If the DOT doesn't get any plan from us about a change in the traffic pattern, they'll just keep it the same. And so, the status quo is always an option. But if the town was looking to implement some of the recommendations that you'll find in the bike and pedestrian plan and in the long range plan, talking about traffic calming, pedestrian safety improvements, bicycle infrastructure, this could be the time to do it. I know when I was in Salisbury, one of the common refrains that I heard was, they missed their window to reconfigure Main Street, because NCDOT came and restriped Salisbury's Main Street through downtown 10, 20 years ago. But they decided not to change the traffic pattern at that time. And there were some people who were concerned that, they kind of missed their opportunity to make pedestrian improvements downtown. Now Salisbury is finally getting. So, all that is to say, the governing board has the opportunity to recommend to the DOT changes to Salisbury Avenue. That could be lane reduction, that could be improved crosswalks, that could be bike infrastructure, but we'll have to have that conversation. And I will let you know that DOT has asked me to make sure that the town submits a draft of a plan by the end of summer if it does want to change the pattern. And so even if the timeline isn't till 2 or 3 years down the road this project actually occurs, they want to get a plan in fairly early because they'll bid the project out well in advance.
So let me ask you, so if we don't submit a plan, they will keep it as it is?
It will stay
Well,
pretty much exactly the same.
That's a done deal. Next case. Sorry,
I can tell you're vehemently against it.
opposed
So,
to doing the lunacy that they've done in Salisbury.
so let me play angel's advocate for you, because you're playing devil's advocate. So, I understand. My biggest concern with doing anything differently, especially going down to 2 lanes, is the fact that this is an alternate route when 85 gets shut down.
Big
And as we've seen over the past several
That happens
years, it
pretty often.
happens pretty frequently. So that could end up being a nightmare. However, I've seen where this type of thing and traffic calming works really, really well in small towns. I take Hendersonville, North Carolina, is a fantastic example of where they've done that. And it's really promoted folks engaging in the downtown and taking advantage of the businesses and that sort of thing. However, I just don't know if we're set up for that right now. I know, I live right on the border there where Salisbury is. So every day when I go to Salisbury, I get to experience Salisbury Avenue and their rework that they did on 29 there. And it's
You crawling in.
interesting to say the least.
Abysmal.
But what I would say is I do think we need to take advantage of this opportunity to improve some of our crosswalks. I can think specifically of the one there, at the Transportation Museum, of really working to improve that. I think to better connect the Transportation Museum and our visitors with our downtown, I think we need to find a way with striping and crosswalks to be able to do that.
Or even better, do some bike lanes if we're going to keep it 4 lanes, because we have picked up with bikers and scooters even.
Yeah.
I mean,
The thing that people don't realize is that the reason our thoroughfare is as wide as it is because years ago, there was a trolley that ran from Spencer to Salisbury to not only bring workers to the old Spencer shops, but also shoppers to Salisbury before the bus lines. And my argument, when I talk to people in Salisbury, was the fact that why reduce 4 lanes to 2 when there's still plenty of room to narrow those lanes to still be within DOT guidelines in terms of width of a lane and still have bike lanes. And I just think that they made a big mistake, but I'll get off my soapbox.
Well, I think the bike lanes are important too.
Yeah,
And I think the
I
thing
do
we
too,
need to
but
do.
I don't think that you have to sacrifice 2 lanes of
Right,
traffic
right.
just to have a bike lane.
The-
And besides, my argument was that, there aren't that many bicyclists that use those lanes. They should have changed the logo to reflect a pile of leaves or debris because that's what they're primarily used for. But that's another subject. But anyway, my standing argument is there's still plenty of room to leave 4 lanes of traffic and add those bike lanes. All you've got to do is narrow the lanes.
The other thing we need to, and I see Joe standing up because I'm about to say this, is that with the grant that we have from the NCDOT, part of that, is connecting the Yadkin River to town with bike
Yeah.
and potential greenway.
Yeah.
you know, if they're restriping, this is a way to get that done without that impacting the bottom line on our grant funding as well, if they're gonna be restriping. So we need to, if that's part of the plan, we need to understand what the plan is from the Yadkin River end so that we can make sure that we get that taken care of with this resurfacing job. Was that what you were gonna speak to?
Well, what I was gonna suggest, and it was great hearing that observation about the early plans, because the thing I would suggest to the board, keep an open mind and recognize that between downtown and the Yadkin River, there are sort of districts and along the way that have different characters. And so it's not gonna be a one size fits all type treatment to do, you know, just lane reduction or whatever. But it's a good time to study it. And I think that if you don't spend a little bit of time as a board analyzing what the possibilities might be, you're gonna regret not doing it. Because I've heard, I know there's mixed feelings about what happened in Salisbury, but a common sentiment that I heard was, why didn't we do this when we had the chance? And the chance is arriving, and so it's just a very good opportunity for the board to be reflective and make a decision that's gonna affect the next cycle, which is about a 15-year paving cycle.
So,
You might as well.
so tell me, you're talking about studying it now. What would the plan be if Kyle's saying we have to come up with some type of draft by the end of the summer?
Well,
That didn't
so-
give us a lot of
So,
time.
and this, I don't know how much you've had an opportunity to talk to the board about the Kinley Horn
That
situation.
comes next.
Okay, you want me to kind of run with it, or?
I'm happy to jump in here. So, related to the Greenway project, in previous conversations with NCDOT, the price tag on that project, according to the models at NCDOT, has potentially gone up from maybe about $4 million to $11 million. And we
Not
have
sure
to,
why.
we have to figure out really what is the accurate lay of the land to do this, and what are the right of way needs? What are the, what is the section gonna look like? What is this really gonna cost to build? So we can actually plan for it. And so Kimley Horn is an engineering firm that specializes in this type of work and a few other things. And we've had some preliminary discussions with them about, you know, them providing this type of technical assistance for that project. I think this plays well into it, to maybe think about something like this at the same time, and they could work on what they call like an on-call basis, where we enter into an agreement with them where they'll perform work to us not to exceed, for example, $5,000, and they help us with all sorts of things. Do we need to do a traffic impact analysis or design something, or it's kind of an open-ended relationship. And if something's going to cost more than that amount, then we separately negotiate that type of agreement. But it gets them kind of on our team to provide this type of technical assistance.
And so it'd be an opportunity to use that now to do a little bit of a study. There's already a lot of work already done in the comprehensive bicycle. I mean, there are already sections that are pre-designed that can be applied. So just be a matter of having probably a level above a windshield inspection, but someone to look at it and say, these are some possibilities that you might want to consider.
Is that the 2025 plan that you're talking about?
There is a separate, comprehensive bicycle and pedestrian plan that was done as a joint plan between Spencer and East Spencer. And I think it was about 4 years ago that it was adopted.
Yep.
It was prior to my time. And so there's a ton of stuff in that plan. It's
It's a very long document.
200 pages of analysis, and a lot of it is already graphically depicted, related to Salisbury Avenue.
It speaks to bicycle improvements and sidewalk improvements and pedestrian improvements.
So it's kind of a matter of looking at that and saying, can you realistically string that together and utilize some of these concepts and the restriping program and make it work.
So we do need to go ahead and do this because they're willing to come in here and get it done for us. We just need to go ahead and dream it and they build it kind of thing.
One area where we
Just like that.
one area where we could start is we're actually thinking about putting a blurb in the summer newsletter, asking people to provide their input on potential changes to Salisbury Avenue. Now, given that this is the only newsletter in between now and when we need to get a draft in, we kind of had to rush it a little bit. But if the board is amenable to that, we'll go ahead and set up some sort of online survey, and we can also direct people towards me to learn more about the possibility and also to provide their
We
input.
are.
At the end of the day, I'm not sure, and I don't know if Joe knows the community's overall sentiment
Right.
to make changes to Salisbury Avenue. We need to get the public input first,
Right.
and then we can develop a plan. One final thing I'll say is Kelly Seitz is the district engineer, and JP Couch is the division traffic engineer. I'm slated to have a conference call with both of them to talk about this more in the coming weeks, and perhaps we could facilitate a ongoing dialogue between them and the board and the town to make sure that we can meet the deadline that we need to.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we discussed this the other night at our meeting, our parents committee. I know we need to keep an open mind. We represent people. We're not representing our own thoughts and everything else. We had several merchants that was in favor of this, reducing it. And I think we need to consider our merchants on Main Street first, because, I mean, I know some people are worried about emergency exits and everything else, and I agree, that's very important as far as that goes. But we need to attract merchants on our Main Street. That's what we're trying to do. So I think we need to consider them as representatives of them, not just our personal opinions. Because we are representatives. People voted for us to be representatives for them. So we've got to keep an open mind.
And that's what concerns me about this timeline. It's that I'm worried we're not gonna have the time to engage our citizens and our businesses like we probably need to.
If I could tell you a quick story about how I learned about it, I was putting the Community Appearance Commission sign at 1514 South Salisbury. I don't know if y'all drove by it and saw that beautiful front yard, but the property owner was complaining to me about how drivers will now speed to get first in line when the lane's reduced to 1 in Salisbury. So now, as people leave Spencer, they're sort of speeding away.
I'm guilty.
And she was asking me, what can the town do to help this? And that got me thinking, well, when is NCDOT going to come around for resurfacing? And that's when I learned that it's actually coming up fairly quickly. And so it seems like ever since I started here, we're working on an abbreviated timeline, but
So why did we not know about this earlier?
I'm not sure. I think DOT has a schedule that is in flux all the time.
What is it, Joe? Tell us.
I received a letter about 2 days ago dated May 26th that similarly it says that DOT is currently in the process of evaluating division paving needs for the FY22 paving season, and if there's any state maintained roads in our area that we want to be considered, they want to have comments by June 25th. And so
June 24th.
they give it a month
Different than
to
what I heard.
tell them where they should pave the roads in Spencer.
Well, what I can say is
Wow,
that the
really?
DOT's road rescheduling, it's always in flux. And what I heard 2 weeks ago from the district engineer is different what I heard this afternoon. And so really no one is to blame. It's NCDOT needs to step up their communication.
Here's the thing. Salisbury's been dealing with this for about 2 years. Okay, and all that time and all the marketing material that they put out there to try to sell the public on the idea of converting 4 lanes down to 2, they never said that in the flyer. Oh, they said they was going to bring prosperity back to downtown Salisbury. Yada, yada, yada. And they gave a laundry list of stuff. But in all of that flyer, and I have the flyer, it says absolutely, it obfuscates, you know, it just passes over the fact that they're gonna lose it. And I would bet you money that after all of this is said and done, they're gonna regret doing that, because again, this is a major thoroughfare out here. We have the Transportation Museum. Whenever they have a special event, it becomes a nightmare, especially during, you know, the holidays when they're doing Polar Express or Thomas the Tank. You narrow these streets down here to one lane only in each direction, you're gonna have a mess on your hands. And again, my whole argument is the fact that the entire street is wide enough to keep the 4 lanes and add additional bike lanes on each side.
Yeah, and with that being said, I mean, I think it goes back to Joe's point. We need to understand what the options are,
Yeah.
right? And we need to understand that really sooner rather than later.
Real soon.
And to add to your conversation, to your point, is that there's a way to design to accommodate Thomas the Tank Engine, Polar Express, and all that. You know, 2 to 3 times a year, 5 to 6 times a year, and still have meet the needs of your community during the other 340 days of the year. The situation you have now is you've got a 4-lane highway through your downtown. That is a design speed for 55 mile per hour traffic speed. And people are racing to get out of Spencer because they're gonna have to slow down and solve. And that needs to be flipped so that people are slowing down in Spencer and looking at the shops.
And stopping
And
at the shops.
stopping and seeing what's going on.
I know how to fix it
And-
all.
And I'm
Just
gonna-
put a roundabout up right up there at the plaza. Just put a roundabout, and that'll stop
them all
all of this.
in
Keep
all
it
In all the
Put a
intersections.
roundabout up
That'll
there.
work. Yeah, boy.
And so one final sort of esoteric point that I will make is, you're like, that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right. That's exactly what we're trying to
And
do.
and this ain't doing that, y'all, I'm sorry. If there's a way to help get to there by doing something.
Yeah, you got to.
So the Kibley Horn thing, how did we happen across them? Because, hey, I guess my perspective, there are lots of firms out there. There's some more local ones that do that sort of thing.
It actually, so just full disclosure, the person we talked to is somebody I used to work with at Concord.
Okay.
But I wound up talking to him because I was talking with Concord's transportation director, who is current chair of the MPO, about this whole idea of the scope changing on the Greenway and how do we figure this out? And that was the recommendation. Well, we use Kibley Horn to do this sort of thing all the time, and that's where the conversation
Gotcha.
came from.
Okay. Well, they're good at it. I mean,
And,
no
and
doubt.
there's no, what they're proposing is not a lockdown, so we have to use them exclusively. It was a short term, how can we get to a realistic number?
Yeah.
As far as this project, and then the repaving came along, and we thought we could talk
Yeah.
to them about it.
Very good.
Well, if I could just say in closing, we'll make sure if we present these options to the public, we're not gonna obfuscate, and we're gonna tell what the
I would-
options are. So
I'd
that
tell
people
it
know
plain,
what the
plain,
options-
yeah.
options
And say,
Yeah.
you know, this is gonna reduce a lane of travel. But make that part, you know, part of it. And that's what it just infuriated me, because they had totally passed or glazed over that.
What don't infuriate you?
Huh?
What does?
I think the key is that we have options that retain the 4 lanes. There's the do nothing approach. There's the option that hopefully retains the 4 lanes and bike lanes. You know, I've got a concern about on-street parking and losing parking for our
Yeah.
downtown merchants. But we need to vet those options out. We need to see with reduced lanes. We need to see with multiple lanes and bike lanes, what are our options? And that's what then our public needs to weigh in on.
Who's
Well, I'm
gonna
gonna
put-
actually make a budget request to install a fully operable trolley between Spencer and Salisbury.
Yeah.
And I want it operable by next year. I'll work on that.
That'd be great.
You just find the money for it. We'll be good.
Right for both
Where
Do you
do
have
we
any other
stand with
questions for me about the DOT project?
Thank you.
Where do we stand with the bus routes? Is that still all up in the air, or is that?
Peter, you want to give an update on the bus routes since we're talking transportation and our.
The city of Salisbury's budget, which I'm actually not sure where they are in the process of their adoption, but the budget recommendation at least included funding to continue the Route 3 as we know it. And East Spencer and Spencer Management were informed of that by Salisbury City Manager, and with a suggestion that if perhaps we had any federal recovery dollars that might help contribute into that, it might be appreciated. I don't see anything in what the guidance we've gotten so far that identifies that to be used for transit. There's specific transit recovery funds that have been provided to transit agencies. And so but I certainly express appreciation for the update on the service and that we could continue to discern the ability to use those funds. But at the end of the day, some of the requests had come with various models on costs based on solely on time spent in East Spencer and Spencer. Salisbury's running a 3-route fixed transit system, and the Route 3, they've identified that about 47% of that route spends in the limits of these two towns. And so their financial models of what perhaps these towns should contribute account for 47% of the operating or the net operating costs. In my opinion, that has to be balanced with ridership. And maybe if you had a system with 7 or 10 routes, and one of them was serving this area, you could better put that metric out there about time served. But on a 3-route system, that's basically saying, well, 1/6 of our overall system is for you. And I think there's a different number out there that might make more sense. And the other part of it is Spencer has put capital improvements into the system through the use of through the installation of bus shelters, one in the prior year budget, making sure that we move ahead with the funding in the current year budget for a bus shelter at the Park Plaza. We're working on getting that wrapped up. And so, I think those are types of investments we can feel good about putting into the system, so because they very clearly serve our community and make the system better. But I think the funding picture is kind of complicated, and more so than what the data we've seen reveal. And I don't know if the mayor wants to add anything else to that.
So you're being very kind.
Diplomat.
My engineering brain, in reviewing the numbers, say the math don't work. What we've seen thus far, it doesn't make sense to me. And it's because the full picture is not being provided, and we've asked for the full picture. We have not gotten the full picture. I think, but I think we're appreciative that they're going to continue the service through their budget this year. I think there is an ongoing dialogue. I think this is a short-term solution, but we do need to be working towards a longer-term solution. But we've got to get the information that we ask for to be able to
Make an informed decision.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Anything else? All right. Well, we've made it an evening, folks. Staff, thank y'all for your time tonight and work and sticking with us. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Morgan, second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor? All opposed? Stand adjourned.
Happy trails are here again.
24.
Listen up.